Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about a show that I haven't talked about on my channel yet, and that is Friends. Now, if you are one of those people that doesn't think Friends is funny, thinks that it's overrated, then this video isn't the video for you. Because I love Friends. I'm one of those annoying people. I have been called basic for the fact that it's my favorite show. And you know what? It's fine. I'll take it. I don't care. It's a show that I have watched since I was literally, I couldn't even tell you, probably like 7 years old. It's also, my dad's favorite show, and it's a show that we watched together, and a show that I just absolutely adore. I have seen every episode so many times, and it's just such a good comfort show. I could watch it any time of day. I would say I probably watch at least one episode of Friends a week, and have done for the past 15 years of my life. And because of that, I like to think I know this show pretty well. If you watch my channel, then you'll know, obviously, my kind of bread and butter tends to be more like teen dramas, like Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars. Maybe I could try and do this kind of video for them. I don't know how good it would be. I feel like I've seen those a lot of times, like a lot of times, but absolutely nowhere near the amount of times that I have seen Friends. So today I'm going to try to tell you everything that happens in all 10 seasons of Friends. We're going to start from the pilot and we're going to work all the way up until the finale. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do every single tiny plot line from every single episode. It's going to be more like bigger arcs, who dated who and things like that. Usually when I make these kinds of videos, I'll have a script, or I'll have planned it out a little bit, bullet points. Like when I do my deep dives, there's kind of key moments that I want to remember and I plan for. Today, we are literally just doing it based off of my knowledge of Friends. We are going to test my knowledge of Friends today and see how accurately I can remember what happens in which season, which order things come in, if there's any big things that I forget. I have zero notes. I don't have a script. I don't.
Words. Line, circle, square, big.
For today's video, there is no script. There are no notes, no bullet points. I have nothing to look at as a point of reference, literally just my brain. And we're going to see if I know Friends as well as I think I know it today. The only kind of, help that I do have is that usually how I do these videos is I print out pictures. So I do have pictures of characters that we're going to see. That's it. I don't have their names written on them. I don't have which seasons they were in, which episodes they were in. Literally just for points of reference when I do start to talk about them, so that I can stick them up here and you guys can know who I'm on about. So I've already started off with our 6 main friends here. We've always got Rachel Green, Monica Geller, Phoebe Buffay, Ross Geller, Chandler Bing, Joey Tribbiani. And we've got our little categories up here, which I do anytime that I do one of these videos. So we have dated, related, and kissed, because we have quite a few, kisses or brief hookups in this show that don't actually amount to full relationships. Monica and Ross are siblings. Monica is Ross's younger sister. They grew up together in Staten Island. And that's also where Rachel grew up. So Rachel is Monica's old best friend. They were best friends all throughout middle school and high school, and then kind of drifted away from each other when college starts. Chandler is Ross's college roommate. So he knew Monica from just through Ross. And now he and Monica live across from each other. She lives in apartment 20 and he lives in apartment 19 in the same building. But in the first episode, I think he lives in apartment 4 and she lives in apartment 5 or something. But then they realized that logistically that didn't work and they changed the numbers. So it becomes the iconic apartment 20 and apartment 19.
Come on, apartment 20! Apartment 20!
Joey here is Chandler's roommate, and I think when the show starts, they've lived together for about a year, maybe just over a year. And then we also have Phoebe. So Phoebe is Monica's friend and she was her roommate. But when we start the show, she has already moved out of Monica's apartment. But these 5 are kind of, they're the friend group when we first start. We open the pilot and they're all sitting in the coffee house, which is called Central Perk. That's kind of one of our main locations. We have the 2 apartments and then we have Central Perk. We also kind of have Ross's apartment and Phoebe's, but they're definitely more like secondary locations. The big 3 are Central Perk, Monica's, and Chandler's. Ross comes in and we basically find out at this moment that he is getting divorced, or that he is officially divorced from his wife, Carol. So let's just put Carol's picture up now. So we have Carol and Susan here. So Carol is Ross's ex-wife. They got divorced because she realized that I guess not realized, but she came out as a lesbian and she starts having an affair with Susan and then divorces Ross. So we are introduced to both of these characters in season 1. Now, obviously, as Ross was married to Carol, she gets a red line to Ross. And he's basically complaining and saying that he just kind of wishes that he was married again. And at that point, Rachel runs into the coffee shop and she's in a wedding dress. She comes in and she's looking for Monica and she's like, I know we kind of drifted apart recently, but you were the only person that I knew in the city and I've run away from my wedding because she was supposed to marry Barry Farber, who is an orthodontist, and she decides she can't marry him, she doesn't love him. So she runs away from the wedding. She comes looking for Monica and is kind of adopted by this friend group. And we also find out in this first episode that Ross had a huge crush on Rachel when they were growing up and still kind of, harbors a little bit of love for her still. So we're going to put Barry, Rachel's almost husband, up here as well. So Rachel's parents are very rich. Her dad, oh my God, what is his name? I feel like they always just call him like Mr. Green. And she just calls him Daddy. Oh my God, I can't remember. Anyway, Rachel's dad is a doctor and Rachel's mum, actually, I think she was just a sorority girl and then she married Rachel's dad. But anyway, they got money, okay? These people have money. And so Rachel's kind of has to come to terms with the fact that if she wants to stay in New York and she doesn't want to, in New York City, and that she doesn't want to marry Barry and she kind of wants to leave that whole world behind, that also means leaving the wealth behind and the kind of support of her family, because she also has 2 sisters, Jill and Amy, and they come into it a little bit later, but that's kind of her family unit and they're all very rich and she kind of has to step away from that kind of life of privilege. And the friends are definitely more relatable characters. We have, Monica's an aspiring chef, and I think she works in a restaurant at this point. We've got Phoebe, who is a masseuse and also plays guitar. Ross is a paleontologist. Chandler is something in data configuration. I can't remember what it is now, which is just rich because that's literally a huge joke in the show that no one knows what Chandler does. Statistical factoring and data reconfiguration or something like that, or a transponder.
Statistical analysis and data reconfiguration.
I quit and you learn what I do?
Basically just works in an office, and Joey is an aspiring actor. And obviously they all, have roommates. Phoebe lives, with her grandma, and Ross lives alone. He's just got a divorce. So they're kind of in definitely more relatable parts of life to the average viewer, whereas Rachel is kind of stepping into this new way of living. And at the end of the pilot, Ross decides to kind of put the feelers out there and ask Rachel, would it be okay if I asked you out sometime? And she says, yeah, maybe, And so he's like, okay, maybe I will, and we kind of leave that door open. Rachel and Monica obviously make up, and Rachel moves in with Monica because she has a spare room. So now we have Rachel and Monica living in apartment 20. We have Chandler and Joey living across the hall from them in 19. And Carol has just moved out. I don't know if Carol moved out actually, or if Ross moved out into a new apartment. I think Ross moved out into a new apartment. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, Ross is living by himself. Phoebe lives with her grandmother. The kind of first point of call for Rachel, as she is kind of in this new lifestyle, is to get a job. Monica says something like, welcome to the real world, it sucks, you're gonna love it, or something like that. So Rachel, does a few interviews and she ends up getting a job at Central Perk. And the other person who works at Central Perk that is quite a integral character to the show is Gunther. And he works in Central Perk for the entirety of the show. The actor who played him, who has sadly passed away now, was actually just an extra. And then he was the only one who knew how to work a coffee machine, I'm pretty sure is the story, because he was a barista. And because of that, he got put into kind of the main slot, and then the character of Gunther kind of grows from there. So in the first season, he's not very prominent, but he does become more of a side character as the series goes on, and he also is in love with Rachel. So Rachel starts working at the coffee shop, and she's terrible at it. But the gang, kind of try and boost their spirits a little bit. And one of Rachel's first big storylines is that she has to return the ring that Barry gave her to him. And when she takes the ring back to him, she finds out that Barry was actually cheating on her for the majority of their relationship with her best friend, Mindy. I don't have a picture of Mindy, so we're just going to write Mindy's name down. She ends up kind of just finally ending things with Barry and starting to kind of move on. So Ross is kind of like, maybe this is my chance to kind of tell her how I feel about her. Monica goes on a couple dates in season 1. We have Paul the wine guy, who is kind of a sleazy, guy that basically says, oh, I haven't slept with anyone since like my wife cheated on me or something, in order to sleep with people at work. So she dates him for I think that might be the first or second episode. She has a couple different, she has Fun Bobby, who is an alcoholic. She dates him for a little bit until he stops being an alcoholic, and then she thinks he's boring. Back down to Ross. So Carol, who was actually played by a different actress in the first, I don't know if it's just the first time she appears or if it's 2 episodes where she's played by a different actress, but then she gets replaced, and this is Carol. This is the Carol that we know and love. And Carol comes to Ross at work and tells him that she is pregnant. So now we have this whole kind of trying to work out how they're going to parent between the 3 of them, Susan, Carol, and Ross. And if Ross wants to be involved, and he, kind of, at first he's not really sure, he thinks it's going to be too weird, but then when they actually go to the ultrasound appointment together and he gets to see his baby, he kind of comes around and they decide they're going to do this as a kind of parenting team. Ross at this point obviously still kind of holds a bit of a candle for Carol. He still loves her because it was very abrupt for him. He didn't want this divorce at all, and seeing that, obviously Susan was the other woman, they have a kind of bitter rivalry. Ross and Susan, they really don't get on. They bicker a lot, and there's a very tense dynamic going on here.
It's my baby too.
Really? I don't remember you making any sperm.
Chandler in season 1 has been dating, well, the first time that we actually meet her, he is trying to break up with her, and she is one of the most iconic characters of this show, and that is Janice. Janice is a queen. Janice is an icon. She is a legend of the game. So they are dating, and Chandler wants to break up with her. That's kind of the first time we meet her. We get, the oh my god and the laugh and all that stuff, and it's kind of struggling to break up with her. This is kind of the first time we see her, and Phoebe actually ends up breaking up with her for him. She kind of goes away. That's kind of the only time that we see her for now. Phoebe kind of has a lot of random one-off storylines. It takes quite a few seasons for us to really get into long-term storylines for her, because in the first season we have a couple of weird ones, like I think it's the first season she gets money put into her bank account from the bank, and when she tells them, they're like, oh, thank you for telling us, and they give her a phone, and it's a whole thing. Then she also finds a thumb in one of her soda cans, and just kind of random things like that. she's just kind of there more to say she's kind of there to say like random weird and funny things that don't really make sense, and all the other friends are just kind of like anyway. In kind of the first season. But one storyline she has in the first season that gets carried along up until season 9, yeah, I'm pretty sure season 9 is the end of it, is a character called David the science guy. Oh my gosh, when does he get introduced? He is introduced when Phoebe is performing and him and his friend are talking, and she kind of calls him out for talking, but then he says that he was saying she's the most beautiful like girl he's ever seen, and they start kind of, you know, hooking up, going on dates, but they don't actually officially become boyfriend and girlfriend. So we're just going to give them a blue line. Putting them on hold for a second, we're going to go back to Rachel. So after she has a whole thing with Barry, we have the blackout episode. So there is a power outage across the whole of New York. Chandler gets stuck in an ATM vestibule with Jill Goodacre, and the rest of the group are at Monica's apartment. During the blackout, Ross decides he's going to make his move. This is his time. And while they're out on the kind of terraced bit, you know, the fire escape bit, he's about to tell her when a cat jumps down and kind of attacks him. So then they go looking for whose cat this is, and Rachel finds out that it is a guy called Paolo, an Italian guy that lives downstairs, I think. And so she starts kind of hooking up with him and having a relationship with him. I didn't actually get a picture of Paolo. I think he's in like, oh God, I think he's in like 4 episodes. I think she dates him across like 4 or 5, but I think we only actually see him in like 1 or 2. And I would say they did officially date because they were like going to go on holiday together and everything. Paolo then goes to Rome, and we have the New Year's Eve episode, and everyone's like, oh, I wish, you know, I had someone to like kiss for New Year's. Or they decide they're not going to have any dates for New Year's, but then they actually do end up with dates. Like they say they're not going to bring anybody, but then Chandler invites Janice. Rachel invites Paolo, but he doesn't end up making it. And Monica, I think, invites Fun Bobby, but his granddad had just died, so he's very not Fun Bobby. And Joey invites a girl that he met while he was being an elf or something, and she brings her kids. And Phoebe brings David. Now, David, like I mentioned, is a scientist, and he gets a pretty incredible job offer to go to Minsk and to... it's something about subatomic particles. Anyway. And at first, you know, he thinks he's not going to take the job because he wants to be with Phoebe, but she convinces him that he should go, even though, you know, they love each other. He says, you know, don't start the new year with me if you can't finish it. So he leaves, and none of them get their New Year's kiss apart from Joey and Chandler. Paolo comes back from Italy after this episode and gets a massage from Phoebe. And when he's getting a massage from Phoebe, because she works in a massage parlor, he kind of starts putting the moves on her, makes a pass at her, and she has to tell Rachel that he did this, and Rachel breaks up with Paolo. And in between this, you know, Ross and Rachel kind of have flirty moments, sweet, you know, kind of really building that relationship across this first season. And like I said, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exact plot points because in this first season, it definitely is a kind of getting to know these characters. Who are they? What kind of interests do they have? And that results in a lot of 1 episode storylines. We don't have a lot that cross over. So I would say aside from Carol's pregnancy with Ben, that's kind of the only one that runs through this whole season. Phoebe dates another guy who's like a psychologist or something, and when he psychoanalyzes all the friends, they decide they hate him, and she ends up breaking up with him. Monica dates this guy that she really likes but is scared her friends won't like, but then when she introduces him, I think his name's Alan, all the friends really love him, but he doesn't love the friends, so then she still breaks up with him. And like, do you see what I mean? We have quite a few of those kind of things. I don't know if it's like a big plot point, but another thing that kind of runs throughout season 1, Ross's monkey Marcel. So Ross gets a monkey. For a good part of season 1, he has this monkey until, you know, he can't look after him anymore, and he gives him to the San Diego Zoo. That's kind of going on for a while. At one point, Rachel loses him, and Ross again try to ask her out, but then she loses Marcel, and that becomes a whole thing. And then afterwards, they're sitting down, they've got like wine and stuff, and he's about to ask her out when Barry comes in and says that he can't be with Mindy. He doesn't want to marry Mindy. He wants to be with Rachel. So now we've got a whole nother obstacle in the way of Ross and Rachel. And she kind of actually entertains this for a little while. They end up sleeping together. She's like, maybe I should take him back. He's had a bit of a, we don't see him before like this, but apparently he's had a bit of a glow up, right? And she's kind of seeing him, but then when she speaks to Mindy, realizes he's playing both of them, and she decides, to cut it off. Mindy, on the other hand, decides to still go ahead with it and marry him. I think season 1 is also where we get the coma guy. Monica like wolf whistles at this guy, and then he gets hit by an ambulance or something, and Phoebe and Monica both go to see him when he's in his coma and all this stuff. Oh, I don't know if it's season 1 or 2 when like Chandler starts dating Janice again, when it's like the blind double date and it turns out to be Janice. Chandler and Janice have quite a few reconciliations on this show, so it's kind of hard to tell when these ones happen, but I think it's Valentine's Day, and Joey wants to go on this double date with a girl that he wants to go out with, so he begs Chandler to come with him, and that she is going to bring someone for him, and it turns out to be Janice, and then he and Janice kind of start dating again, and he then decides he doesn't want to be with her again and breaks up with her again. I think that's the one where she's like, you love me, you just don't know that you love me. So they have a whole nother thing again. Rachel like falls off of the side of the building trying to take down the Christmas lights and hurts her ankle. She ends up using Monica's insurance, and it's a whole thing. They end up like going out with these cute doctors. One's played by George Clooney, and I think the other guy's also from ER. So that's, something that happens. These very like I'm saying, that these one-off kind of storylines. Probably the biggest kind of plot point in this show comes to a head, and that is when Carol goes into labor and everyone's at the hospital, and she ends up giving birth to Ben. And they call him Ben because Susan, Ross, and Phoebe get trapped in this cupboard together because they're just bickering. So Phoebe's like, right, we're just going to stay in here. They accidentally get locked in there, and she puts on a pair of overalls, and the name on them says Ben. And that's kind of where the inspiration for his name comes from. It's also really cute. Keep this is just a little like nugget. It has no relevance now until a very long time from now. But Monica sees these people with these twins, and she wants a baby really bad. And she's like, this isn't fair. I don't even have one. How come this couple gets two? And Chandler kind of consoles her and is like, oh, if you're not married by the time you're 40, we'll get married. And she's like, why would I be married when I'm 40? And it's a whole thing. And I think just knowing where we go in the timeline, it's just really cute to see that there was this kind of almost foreshadowing in season 1. So I'm going to put a picture of Ben up. I've decided to go with Ben from like the later seasons when he's played by Cole Sprouse, but obviously at this point in season 1, he's just a newborn. And obviously they are related. Joey in season 1, I'm going to be so real with you right now. I can't really remember his storylines from season 1. I think season 1 is when he finds out that his dad is having an affair, which is quite an emotional episode. We get a bit of kind of character depth to Joey then, because he kind of questions if he's going to be like that, because he is kind of portrayed to be kind of a womanizer, dates a lot of different women and doesn't really have relationships and things, and he kind of worries if that means that that's what he's going to be like even if he does get into a serious relationship.
And I'd like to believe that when the right woman comes along, you will have the courage and the guts to say, no thanks, I'm married.
You really think so?
Yeah, I really do.
Thanks, Chandler.
Get off.
His parents end up staying together because his mum actually likes the dynamic of the dad cheating and, whatever. And it's all very weird for him to wrap his brain around, bless him. He also has a couple of different acting jobs. Like I said, he's an aspiring actor. So we don't get really a lot. He does like a couple plays, I think. He does He gets his first agent as well in season 1, and that is Estelle Leonard. So after he does a play, I think it's the Freud play that he does, Estelle, kind of leaves her card, and that's when he gets signed to his first agent, and that's the agent that he has up until season 10. Speaking of parents on rocky ground, Rachel's mum comes to visit her and basically says that she is getting divorced from Rachel's dad. I think this is season 1. Oh no, maybe that's season 2. Season 1 and season 2 are so blurred in my mind, I can't even lie. No, I think that is season 2 because then we have the wedding. Oh yeah, no, that's season 2. Ignore me. So before we kind of leave off on season 1 and go into season 2, one of the other, I would say bigger plot points that we get is the dynamic between Ross and his parents and Monica and their parents, because it's very different. So their parents are Jack and Judy. So we have Jack and Judy. Now, Jack less so. I think, we don't really, there's not a lot of tension with Jack. He just seems a bit clueless most of the time, and says some things that are a bit out of pocket. Whereas Judy definitely, her and Monica have a very, very strange relationship. Ross is kind of seen as the golden child and he can do no wrong. Whereas Monica, it's constantly about her job, or why doesn't she have a boyfriend, and why doesn't she have this and that, and everything always kind of seems to be her fault. We're introduced to this, I think, in the pilot or maybe episode 2. And Monica says, I know you can't trade your parents, but if you could, then I would want like Ross's parents because of how nicely they treat him compared to how they treat Monica. And I think they definitely kind of drop this. It's definitely prevalent in season 1 and season 2. And then after that, I feel like that part of their characters kind of fades away a bit, and they seem to have, they kind of make callbacks to the fact that Ross is still the favorite child, but I think the harshness of how they treat Monica definitely kind of softens as the seasons go on. So now we kind of come to the end of season 1. And the season 1 finale is Rachel's birthday. And Ross has kind of accepted at this point. There was Paolo, there was the ex-husband, and Rachel's kind of like, I can't be doing with dating anymore. I've had enough. And Chandler basically says to him, go to China. He's got this work trip in China. So he's like, go to China, have a good time. You're going to be gone for 2 weeks. Don't worry about Rachel, just forget about it. Forget about her, move on. And so he does. He goes and flies to China. While they're sat around opening Rachel's birthday present, she opens her one from Ross, and it's a brooch. And she says, oh my God, I can't believe he remembered this. I saw it in the window, and I said it was one that my nan had when I was a kid. This is such a thoughtful gift. And Chandler says, well, obviously, don't you remember when he was in love with Carol and he bought her that ridiculously expensive crystal duck? And this is the point that it clicks that Ross is in love with Rachel, because Chandler and Joey obviously already knew this. They've talked about that quite a few times, but none of the girls knew. I think, Monica knew that he had a crush on her when they were younger, but not now. And this is kind of the moment where she actually realizes, oh my God, he is in love with me. He actually deeply cares about me. It's not just a little crush or whatever. She's like, he mentioned something about asking me out, but then nothing ever happened. She decides that she wants to talk to him, and so she goes to the airport, but she doesn't catch him in time. She tries to send a message to him, but it doesn't get to him. And so she comes back and she's kind of talking and deciding whether she should go out with him or not. It could make things really complicated, but it could also, be really great. And Monica's obviously really excited about it, and everything. So anyway, she decides, what? When he comes back from China, I'm just going to see him and I'm going to talk to him and we're going to see what he says, and I think I want to give this a real go. And when she shows up at the airport, she doesn't know that Ross has actually started seeing somebody called Julie while he was in China, and they have come back together. She lives in New York as well, but they I think they knew each other from college as well, but they actually connected on this trip. So now they've started dating and they're coming back, and Rachel is waiting for him at the airport. So that is where we kind of conclude season 1. So Rachel finds out that Ross loves her and meets him at the airport, but he is with Julie. So we start season 2, and it's literally right where we left off at season 1, at the airport. And then Rachel sees that Ross is with Julie, and she's like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Tries to kind of get out of it, but he sees that she's there, and she has to hide the fact that she is now in love with him. So the tables have kind of turned, right? That's pretty much, I would say, the first half, or at least the first third of season 2, is Rachel trying to be okay, you know, with the fact that Ross is now dating Julie, even though she wants to be with him. Chandler calls up Janice after Mr. Heckles dies. Mr. Heckles is their roommate that lives, not their roommate, they're like, their neighbor that lives downstairs, right? He dies. Chandler's afraid that he's becoming like him because he's not that, you know, he doesn't have really any kind of romantic prospects going on in his life, and he's worried that he's going to end up alone. So he rings Janice, but when he rings Janice, she is married and also pregnant. So he's like, right, well, can't do that. I think maybe he dates his assistant. I think it's season 2 where he dates his assistant for like an episode. Oh, and I think it's also it might be season 1 actually, or season 2, where he dates Aurora, I think her name is, but she also has a husband and a boyfriend, and that's a whole thing. So there's that as well. Ross as well is kind of, you know, coming to grips with being a new dad. We don't really see that much of him with Ben. It's kind of weird. We get like rare sort of moments with them, but he's definitely a lot more prevalent in these early seasons, and then he just kind of completely gets forgot about in the later seasons. Like we have an episode where Chandler and Joey look after Ben and they accidentally leave him on the bus. This one that's all about like the fact that Ross won't, you know, try the breast milk and things like that. Phoebe, what happens to Phoebe in season 2? Phoebe she sings. There's this guy, I can't remember his name now, but she like sings for his class at the library. So she does that, you know, has a little kiss and sees that guy for an episode. Phoebe, I think, has the most like one-off love interests across the board. The end of season 1 or season 2, she decides that she wants to know her birth dad because her birth mum ended her own life, and you know, her birth dad had left when she was, I think like 5 or something, maybe even younger. Like, so her mom's called Lily and her dad's called Frank Buffet, and she also has a twin. Her name is Ursula. And so Phoebe decides that she wants to meet him. Her grandma is kind of reluctant at first, but then she does give him his address, and she goes on, I think it's like Christmas Eve or something, to try and meet him, but she just sits outside in the car with Joey and Chandler, and she just decides she's not ready, she's too nervous, so she's going to leave it. Then in season 2, unless that also happens in season 2, or this is just later in season 2, I can't remember, but definitely in season 2, she decides to go back, and she goes back with Joe and Rachel, and again, she's kind of nervous about, you know, going in, and she ends up hitting their dog with her car. And she has to take the dog back, like with the cone and everything. And she asks, you know, the lady comes to the door and she says, "Is Frank here?" And Frank Buffet Jr., or I guess, yeah, Frank Buffet Jr. comes to the door, and Phoebe's like, "Oh no, I meant, you know, older Frank." And she's like, "Well, he left us like 5 years ago." So she's like, "Oh, well, I'm not meeting my dad today then." And as she's walking away, Frank Jr. comes out and he's like, "Oh, how did you know my dad?" And Phoebe's like, "Well, he's my dad as well." So she doesn't gain a dad in that episode, but she does gain a half brother. So let's pop him up on the board. So over here we have Frank Jr. Alice is also in that picture just because I coupled them together, but she hasn't been introduced yet, just Frank. I think it's in season 2 as well that he comes to, you know, stay with Phoebe so that they can kind of have a bit of bonding. And at first she doesn't think they really have anything in common and it's all a bit awkward, but then by the end of it they kind of connect a bit more and they develop a bit of a strange, but, you know, still somewhat of a kind of sibling relationship, which is sweet because obviously Phoebe doesn't really have any family outside of the friends, as she, you know, doesn't speak to her sister. So I feel like it's nice that she kind of gets a little bit of that with Frank. My sweet Joey. I have no idea what this man does in season 2. I think this is the one where he dates that lady that makes the fruit baskets. And he's also doing like a study at the same time to get money. Oh, is this when he starts? Actually, this might be when he gets his job on Days of Our Lives. Yes, I think season 2 is when he first gets his job on Days of Our Lives. Yeah, so Joey ends up getting a job on a soap opera called Days of Our Lives. And this does really well for him. He is playing Dr. Drake Ramore, a neurosurgeon. And this role does really, really well for him. He even gets his own stalker, played by Brooke Shields, called Erica. And he does so well for himself that he has the money to move out. So he does. He moves out into a different apartment, and obviously then him and Chandler aren't roommates anymore, which is kind of sad for, you know, Chandler. It's kind of, they definitely treat it like a kind of breakup. And while Joey's away, Chandler actually gets a new roommate called Eddie, and that's kind of probably, yeah, one of our only sort of consistent plot lines. This one goes across a few episodes, I think maybe 3 or 4 episodes, and then ultimately, well, Joey ends up losing his job on Days of Our Lives, but aside from that, he also just misses living with Chandler, and Chandler misses living with him. So they end up moving back in together, and yeah, they're both living in apartment 19 again. So we have that storyline. We also have a storyline where Ross, Monica, and Chandler are in more stable jobs. Monica's just gotten a promotion at the restaurant where she works, and so they want to go out and celebrate with dinner. And Rachel, Phoebe, and Joey kind of say, you know, I feel like sometimes you guys don't get that we don't make as much money as you do, so we can't always split the bill, you know, evenly, or go to these fancy places or do these big extravagant things because we just don't have the money, which I honestly think was such a good, you know, conversation topic to have. I think it's still one of the best storylines they've kind of explored. And basically, they kind of, you know, get over it, and they, you know, they kind of make up and stuff, and kind of, yeah, just kind of agree to disagree. It kind of just fizzles out because Monica says that she got these steaks from work and an eggplant for Phoebe because Phoebe's a vegetarian. She's going to make them dinner and everything. But she actually ends up being fired for this because her boss sees her taking the steaks as a bribe from the meat vendor. So she ends up being fired. And that's kind of one of Monica's bigger storylines, right? Is then she's trying to find a new job. She's not sure what she's going to do. And so she decides she might start catering. And so she does a job for her mum. Wait. Yeah, I think she does a job for her mum first. I can't remember exactly. And then that's when she loses her fingernail, her blue fingernail in the quiche. And then after that, she does another job for a friend of her parents called Richard Burke. Now, Richard Burke is played by Tom Selleck, absolute icon. And apparently they had to refilm all of his entrances for season 2 because every time that he came into a scene, the crowd cheered so loudly for him that the footage was not usable. So they loved this man, okay? And obviously, being one of Monica's parents' friends, Richard is quite a bit older than her. I think he is about 21 years older than Monica is. And they're kind of flirting while she's doing this catering job. And Phoebe's there as well. And she's like, you know, you're obviously smitten with him. Like, why don't you ask him out? And she's like, oh, no, that would be weird. But anyway, they do end up starting to date. And they date for a good part of season 2. I would say that Richard is probably the most prominent love interest that we get, aside from maybe Mike, who obviously we're going to talk about later, I would say that Richard was like, he stuck around for a good amount of time. A lot of love interests are only in it for one episode, or, you know, we have David who kind of appears, does guest spots across the seasons, whereas like Richard was like, he was in it for a chunk of time. Like he and Monica were in a proper relationship. He interacted with all the other friends as well, had kind of like separate storylines. Like he was in it, like he was a proper character, and the friends really liked him as well, and they kind of decided to put aside their, you see me struggling with this pen, they kind of decide to put aside the age difference, and they do end up revealing to Monica's parents that they are seeing each other, which at first kind of upsets them, but then, you know, they decide that they still, you know, they're going to be together no matter what her parents say.
He's a doctor.
A real doctor?
No, a doctor of meat.
Found it. I'll take that, Dad. That's impossible. He's got a Twinkie in the city.
Dad, I'm the Twinkie.
You're the Twinkie?
So yeah, they date for a good amount of time. They, honestly, I thought a really good match. I know there's a bit of weirdness because obviously their age gap and stuff, but I think putting that aside, I thought their chemistry was really, really great, and I do really love Richard as a character. So these two are dating. We're going to move away from them back to our kind of big ship of the show at the minute, and that is Rachel and Ross. Ross and Julie decide they're going to get a cat together, and Rachel's like, oh my God, they're getting a cat together. Like, this is it. They're together. They're actually together. She goes on this date with this guy, Michael, I think. She ends up calling Ross. She gets really drunk and she calls him and she's like, you know, I have closure now. Like, I'm over you and all this stuff. Like, I hope you're happy with your cat. In the morning, he hears the voicemail, and Rachel is obviously incredibly embarrassed. And he's like, what do you mean that you're over me? Like, I didn't know that you were under me. I didn't know that you were like, that you were interested in me. Like, what is this? She's like, I know that you have feelings for me. And he's like, how do you know? And she's like, well, Chandler told me when you were in China. And it's the whole revelation comes out. So then Ross goes and he's like, well, I'm getting a cat, so I have to leave. And he leaves. Later on at the coffee house, as Rachel is cleaning up, you know, to close the shop, he comes in and he admits he didn't get the cat. He doesn't really know what to do. And we get our first Ross and Rachel kiss of the series, and it's one of my favorite scenes. Honestly, it could get me in an emotional moment. Like, if you catch me in an emotional moment, that scene will make me cry. After they kiss, Rachel goes back and she tells Monica and Phoebe, and they're all like excited about it and like, oh my God. And he tells Chandler and Joey, and they're very chill about it. They kind of say, well, doesn't that mean you want to be with Rachel now? And Ross is like, I don't know. You know, I have Julie, who I get along with, you know, we have a lot in common and things are going really well with her. But then Rachel is like, she's Rachel, you know, I've loved her for years and all this stuff. Chandler comes up with the bright idea to do a pros and cons list. So they write a pros and cons list. Julie is, you know, that she's also a paleontologist, that she's really like academic. I can't remember what it was. Like, he had a whole list of things. And then for Rachel, it was like, you know, cons. It was like, well, she's just a waitress. She has chubby ankles. She can be, you know, a little self-centered, be too into her looks, like all this stuff that's actually really horrible. And they write it down, and his pro for her is that, you know, his con for Julie is that Julie isn't Rachel. So he goes and he breaks up with Julie, and Rachel's obviously excited to be with him. And then she finds out about this list and she decides not to be with him. The list was just too cruel and she would never do something like that. And it's, you know, changed her view of him, and they don't get together. I think Phoebe's grandma dies in season 2. So that means that she's living in the house by herself now. Chandler starts talking to a woman online, and is kind of trying to pursue things with her. You know, he hasn't met her yet, but they talk online and they're getting really close. And Phoebe's like, you have to meet her. So he arranges to meet her at the coffee shop. And who turns up? Janice turns up. Of course she does. Absolute queen. And he decides, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to be with Janice. And they are in it fully this time. Like, again, this is kind of like Richard. A big chunk of, you know, the next few episodes is them together. They're like consistently together. She starts hanging out with the friends and stuff, you know, like that's when you know that somebody is a true like side character. They're in it. They're like interactive with everybody. So that happens. She's in the middle of a divorce, found out that her husband, who we found out about from when she was pregnant in the earlier episode, cheated on her. And so, you know, she's leaving him and she's going to be with Chandler. So like I said, Joey obviously did have his thing on Days of Our Lives. He ends up being fired because he says in an interview that he writes a lot of his own lines and he gets written off of the show. I think he like teaches an acting class or something. And he ends up sabotaging one of his students. That might be this season. Chandler and Janice, they're going really good. They're actually pretty cute when they're together in this kind of part of the show. But ultimately, it kind of comes crashing down because Joey sees Janice kissing her ex-husband and tells Chandler about it. And Chandler's like, you need to choose me or him. Then Joey's like, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't want to be the guy that stands in the way of a family being, you know, getting back together. So Chandler kind of bows out until Janice is like, no, you're right, I should focus on my marriage. And then he's like, no, pick me instead, pick me. But she ends up leaving and Chandler's pretty heartbroken over it. Now, a couple episodes down the line, we get to the one with the prom video. And Rachel sees on an old home video that when her date, Chip Matthews, didn't show up to take her to the prom, Ross got all dressed up in a tux and was going to be the one to take her. And it kind of reminds her how sweet of a guy he is, and they kiss, and they actually start officially dating from this moment. And it's kind of surprising how, like, the short amount of time that Ross and Rachel are actually together, considering the drama around this couple and kind of how iconic they are. So anyway, they, you know, start dating. She even babysits Ben and stuff. They're really close. And they are really, really sweet. I love Ross and Rachel when they first start dating. The second half, I think it is, of season 2, they're really sweet together. And they have some really, really sweet moments. I think, you know what, I think that's most of season 2. At least the things that are like noteworthy. Oh no. How could I forget? So, like I mentioned, Monica's kind of in her catering era. And she offers to cater Carol and Susan's wedding. So Carol and Susan decide they're going to get married. At first, Ross doesn't really know what to think about it. He's kind of, you know, not really up for it, doesn't want to go. Monica agrees to cater it. And then Phoebe also has a woman die on the massage table, so then her spirit goes into her. So she has that for this episode. Oh yeah, of course, okay. Also in this episode, so this is a jam-packed episode, the one with the lesbian wedding. This is a jam-packed episode because Rachel's mum comes to visit New York and tells her that she's getting divorced from Rachel's dad. So that's also another big plot point that's going on. Carol then comes over and expresses to Ross that her parents aren't happy and they're not going to come to the wedding. So now she doesn't know if she wants to get married. And Ross says, you know, you're doing this for you, you're not doing it for them. And he actually is the one to walk her down the aisle, which is so sweet. It's so cute. And yeah, Carol and Susan end up getting married, which for the time was to show that kind of representation of an LGBT couple, especially them getting married when I don't even think gay marriage was legal when they got married on TV. So this was a really big moment in terms of representation in the kind of mainstream. I know when I was growing up, I would say the biggest influences in terms of LGBT characters that I saw on screen was definitely Carol and Susan in Friends when I was younger. And then also Emily from Pretty Little Liars. They were definitely two really big kind of pillars for me in the kind of media pop culture world. And I think it's really amazing that in that time, Friends still, because it's like 1996 season 2, you know, which you'd think, because it wasn't that long ago, that things wouldn't have been so crazy different then, but they were. And I think the fact that they were willing to showcase this relationship, give it a big wedding episode, a big focused episode, I think they were like the first, I think they were like the first LGBT wedding on TV. But basically, it was a big deal, which I think was really cool. So we had that episode. Then I think those are probably the biggest noteworthy things, I think those are probably the biggest noteworthy things for season 2. So now we're going to go to the season 2 finale. And the season 2 finale is honestly kind of forgettable. I'm hoping I'm remembering this right, and this actually is the season 2 finale. If it's not, I'm going to be so embarrassed. I believe the season 2 finale is Barry and Mindy's wedding. So Rachel is Mindy's maid of honor. She has to go in this big bubblegum pink dress, and she takes Ross with her, and Monica and Richard also go. And it's kind of a big moment for Rachel because she gets to face all of these people that obviously, you know, kind of this time last year, she had walked out on Barry, and to kind of stand there and face them all was a really big moment for her. And so she does, and, you know, it's a bit rocky, but she gets there, and we love that for her. Brings her and Ross a lot closer as well because he stands up for her in front of everybody. And honestly, I think the bigger plot point in this season finale is Monica and Richard breaking up. And is this the season finale? Maybe it's not the season. What is the season finale of season 2? Is it this? Now I'm really not sure. Out of all of them, I know all of the season finales. Season 2 is the only finale that I'm not sure about. I'm hoping it's this. If it's not, that's going to be so embarrassing. But Monica and Richard break up, and this one honestly gets me in the feels. Okay, this one gets me in the feels because I am a Monica to my core. I feel that gal. Like, everything that she is, I just relate to her on so many levels. And she ultimately breaks up with Richard because he doesn't want to get married and he doesn't want to have children. And he kind of reluctantly, you know, agrees. He's like, if I have to. And she's like, I don't want someone that is, you know, thinking, oh, if I have to do it again. She's like, I want someone that wants to be with me, wants to have kids, wants to get married. And so they break up, but they, you know, like dance together at the wedding. And it's really sad, but it's also really, like, a really sweet scene. And I think that's how we finish season 2. Because then she's like, is really depressed. But I don't know if that's the start of season 3 or not. We also have this weird plot line where they're filming this movie in New York, and Marcel is there, Ross's monkey, so he goes to hang out with the monkey, and Rachel and Monica fight over Jean-Claude Van Damme, and also Julia Roberts dates Chandler for revenge and leaves him in a stall in just a thong, and it's absolutely hilarious.
Joey? Mother?
Joey, some people don't like that.
I'm getting heat from the guy in the hot pink thong.
Hey.
Now we're moving on to season 3. So season 3, we start off and Rachel and Ross are obviously dating. You know, they love each other. They're all cutesy. It's all good. It is all good. Monica's obviously broken up with Richard and she was really sad about that. Her next big love interest, who is in it for a couple episodes, not as many as Richard, but he is in it for a couple episodes, is Pete Becker. That's it, Pete Becker. And he is a billionaire or a millionaire, one of the two. So Monica starts working in a diner. Basically, her and Phoebe like talk about having this catering business because when Monica was catering, Phoebe was waitressing and like doing the money and everything, but that falls through. So instead, Monica starts working at this diner where she has to kind of dress up. It's like a kind of, I don't even know, like a costume like kind of diner thing. Like people dress as like Marilyn Monroe and Elvis and stuff. So she's working there. And while she's working there, this guy Pete starts hitting on her and basically falls in love with her, but she's not having it. She's not attracted to him. She's not fussed. But then she decides to give him a chance and still the connection is just not really there. But then once she actually kisses him, she realizes that she is attracted to him and they start dating. And they date for quite a few episodes. She even thinks at one point that he's going to propose to her, but it actually turns out that he wants to be an Ultimate Fighting Champion, which is the UFC. And when I watched this as a kid, I had no idea what UFC was. Obviously, I do now. But like, I feel like as a kid, because I didn't know what it was, I couldn't really grasp how brutal it was. So yeah, the fact that he wanted to become an Ultimate Fighting Champion, he literally gets the shit beat out of him so many times. And Monica's like, I can't do this. She's like, I can't watch you, you know, hurt yourself. Like, you either give this up or and we get to stay together, or you don't and I have to leave. And he decides he can't quit. So they end up breaking up. Like I said, obviously Janice and Chandler are broken up now. And I can't remember if he dates anyone in season 3 or not. I think in season 3 he quits his job because he's like, I want to do something else with my life. I want to do something better with my life. And then his boss offers him more money and he ends up just going back to the same job. I think that's season 3. Phoebe, what happens to sweet little Phoebe in season 3? Season 3 might be when Phoebe's sister Ursula is a porn star, but she's using Phoebe's name, so people think that Phoebe is a porn star. I think that might be season 3. Speaking of Ursula, I forgot about Ursula. I think Joey dates her in season 1, actually, or season 2. But yeah, so like I said, Phoebe has a twin, and her name is Ursula. And Joey and Chandler meet her when they go into a restaurant. I think it's called I can't remember where she works. It's like something cafe or something. And anyway, so she's her identical twin, Ursula. And Chandler and Joey meet her when they go into this restaurant. And Joey ends up hooking up with her, like dating her. Even though it makes Phoebe uncomfortable. And Ursula basically ends up ditching Joey, like breaking up with him, and kind of Phoebe tries to soften the blow because basically Ursula's just going to ghost him. She's literally just going to ghost him and never speak to him again. So Phoebe goes to console Joey and pretend to be Ursula and break up with him nicely. But he figures out that it's her after they kiss. So now we have a kiss between Phoebe and Joey. And it's a really sweet moment. She was just trying to protect his feelings, even though he hadn't thought about her feelings at all when he started dating Ursula. So yeah, I can't remember if that was season 2 or even season 1. But yeah, we're adding it in now. Oops. To be honest with you, I feel like such a huge chunk of season 3 is Ross and Rachel's demise that I don't even remember what happens with anyone else. Like, even a little bit. So Rachel decides that she wants better than the coffee house and she's going to quit, and she wants to do something in fashion. That's what she's always wanted to do. So she quits and she managed to get this really like a shitty little job where she's still making coffee for this guy. And then this guy called Mark talks to her. She's sitting in the diner where Monica works, and this guy called Mark is there, and he basically offers that if she wants it, he has a position at Bloomingdale's, I think. That she was working at a place called, I think it was called Fortuna Fashions, and then he is like, do you want to come and work at Bloomingdale's? And she's like, of course, absolutely. And so he basically offers her this job, and she, kind of aces the interview, and she ends up getting it. So we're going to put Mark up on the board now. So we have Mark, and Mark is working with Rachel, and Ross is jealous of Mark from the jump. Like, from the jump, doesn't trust this guy, and just continually embarrasses himself. Like, it's honestly such a hard watch, the way that he basically tries to mark his territory. Rachel even says, she's like, you might as well have just come in and just peed all over my desk. Like, this is so embarrassing. And so it gets to a point where his jealousy is just too much, and Rachel feels like he doesn't respect her, he doesn't respect her job. And I think it's even on their 1-year anniversary, they end up taking a break. Yes, people, we're at the break. Now, if you've ever seen Friends before, or even heard of it in the slides, you must have heard that we were on a break. Are you Team Ross? Are you Team Rachel? Let me know in the comments. So Rachel says, maybe we should just take a break. And Ross isn't happy with that, and he leaves. Now, I'm in the camp of they were on... I don't know. It's such a tricky one because she says, maybe we should just take a break, but he doesn't actually agree to the break. And I don't think it was like clear enough for them to be broken up. You know what I mean? So anyway, he goes and he sleeps with Chloe from the Xerox place, the printing place. I don't have a picture of her. because we don't like Chloe, okay? And obviously Ross was the one with the loyalty, so I'm not just blaming her, but she knew that he had a girlfriend, so it's all a bit shady, but whatever. So we have Chloe. That my handwriting is not this bad, I swear. So he hooks up with Chloe, and then basically because he thinks so, he rings Rachel and hears that Mark is there, and she's not doing anything with Mark. He just came over as a friend. He might have been interested in her. I think the census is that he was interested in her, but Rachel was not interested in him, and Ross should have trusted her. But anyway, he thinks something's going on with them. He hooks up with Chloe, and Rachel leaves a message on his, answering machine saying that she's going to come by before work. She wants them to work things out. And he obviously does as well, so he tries to sneak Chloe out. We then have what Joey refers to as the trail. And it's the trail from the girl that you did it with to the girl that you hope never finds out that you did it. And that trail, in this case, goes from Chloe at the Xerox place works with Isaac, who is her best friend, and she tells Isaac everything. She tells Isaac that she slept with Ross. Ross then goes there and speaks to Isaac, and Isaac's like, well, I already told my sister, Jasmine. Jasmine works with Phoebe at the massage place. So he goes to Jasmine and he's like, oh my God, please don't tell Phoebe. And she's like, what you did was bad. She's like, I won't tell Phoebe, but I already told my roommate. And Ross is like, who's your roommate? And her roommate is Gunther. And obviously, as we know, Gunther loves Rachel. So Gunther told Rachel. That's how Rachel finds out that Ross slept with somebody else. Now, I feel like even if you want to play devil's advocate and be like, well, they were on a break. Sir, like, are you serious? Literally, like 4 hours after breaking up, you slept with somebody else. Like, absolutely not. There's no forgiving it. There's actually no forgiving it. It is inexcusable. And he's like, I think he says something even like that. He's like, I thought, our relationship was dead. And Rachel's like, well, you had a hell of a time at the wake. And it's like, yeah, you literally didn't even mourn it for a second. You dirty bastard. Anyway. So we have probably one of the most emotional scenes in this entire show. And Phoebe, Monica, Chandler, and Joey are all in Monica's room, and they have to listen to it. And they fight, and they yell at each other, and ultimately they break up, and it's really sad. And Rachel's like, you're just a completely different person to me now. I didn't think you could ever hurt me. And that is the end of Ross and Rachel for now. And then they get into this really for the rest of, well, I don't know if it's fully the rest of season 3, but a good chunk of season 3 is just them being mad at each other and kind of feuding, and everyone kind of trying to navigate that. What is the finale of season 3? Because obviously 4, we've got Emily and Ross get married. 5 is Vegas. 6 is the proposal. 7's the wedding. 8 is Emma, and 9 is Barbados. So what is number 3? What is the series finale of number 3? The beach, of course. How could I have been so foolish? So I think it's the beach. If it's not, that aha moment is going to look so dumb. So anyway, Ross and Rachel kind of start dating other people. At first, Ross is really, unhappy about it because he still believes there's a chance that they, could get back together. And Rachel's like, absolutely not. It is not happening. Phoebe sets Ross up with a girl called Bonnie. Rachel dates a couple other people. She dates a guy called Tommy, who's played by Ben Stiller. And he gets really angry and stuff, and then she only dates him for an episode, and there's kind of a bit of back and forth. There's still very much bickering, taking jabs at each other, and all that. Now, Joey, bless his heart, we finally have a bit of a Joey storyline going on. So towards the end of season 3, Joey joins a play, and he's in this play with a girl called Kate Miller, and it's very much giving enemies to lovers, okay? So they bicker when they first meet. They don't like each other. he thinks that she's mean, and then he realizes that he actually does have a crush on her, and he really starts to fall for her and kind of fall in love with her. And unfortunately, they only get to be together for like a night, I think it is, before she quits the play and moves to... I think they wanted her for like General Hospital or something. I can't remember where she was moving to. I think it was like LA or something maybe. So that one, bless his heart, is very short-lived, but she still gets a place up here because she's probably, aside from Rachel, Joey's like biggest love interest. Like I would say even over Janine, because he dates Janine like and whatever, but this was like the first time that we truly saw him like fall for somebody like hardcore, and that it went across like quite a few episodes as well. So we had Joey and Kate for a little bit, which was sweet. Now, this is so, I feel like I'm going to hate editing this, and you're also going to hate watching this because I'm so like all over the place, because as I start talking about the things, I remember things I haven't mentioned yet. This is why I always have a script. This was a terrible idea. So in this season, I'm sure it's season 3. It might be season 2, actually. I think it might be season 2 because Janice is the one that asks about it, which I think puts it in season 2, actually. Because Janice is already gone by this point. Unless Janice was season 2, and just Janice was season 3, and I've completely messed up this whole plot line. Anyway, Janice asks, who of the 6 of you has slept with who of the 6 of you? And they're like, nobody, none of us, obviously, aside from Rachel and Ross. And then she's like, how many of you have almost slept together? So then we get a whole episode that is a flashback to a year earlier. And Monica and Chandler flirt but don't actually kiss. Rachel has like a kind of like fantasy thing about Chandler, but they don't actually kiss. However, and then this is when we see that Joey moves in. Joey and Monica have a bit of a flirt, but nothing happens. And then Ross and Phoebe actually kiss because he has just found out about Carol, and they end up making out in the bar. So we have that as well. So just add that in for you. Now, like I said, this is all over the place. Going back to Bonnie, okay? So we have Bonnie, and Ross only goes out with her for a couple of episodes, but she is Phoebe's friend. And Rachel initially, kind of gives Phoebe permission to set them up because she thought that Bonnie was bold, but she isn't. And she's very gorgeous. She reminds me of Brie Larson. And so Ross dates Bonnie for a little bit, and they end up going to Phoebe's grandma or something. I can't remember, her beach cabin for the weekend. So they go on a little holiday. And on this holiday, Chandler has decided, he kind of, I don't know, he's like jokingly flirting with Monica. Like we're getting a little bit of kind of flirtatious banter from them. And he's like, if I was the last man on earth, would you go out with me? And she's like, well, maybe, maybe I would. And we've got kind of that going on. Phoebe is trying to find not her birth mom, what was it? They're going to like Montauk or something, I think is how it's said. And she's basically looking for her mum Lily's best friend called Phoebe, who she believes that she was named after. And she's like, if I can find this Phoebe lady because she was best friends with my mum and my dad, maybe she can help me find my dad. So that's kind of Phoebe's reasoning for going. Everyone else just kind of tags along. So Phoebe goes to Phoebe's house. And at first, Phoebe Senior kind of pretends like she doesn't really know anything and all this stuff. But then she actually reveals that she is Phoebe's birth mum, not Lily. So she gave birth to Phoebe and Ursula, and she gave them to Frank and Lily, thinking that, they were this amazing couple and they would look after her children and everything. And obviously that was not the case. But Phoebe finds out, that this is her real mum, and she really kind of struggles with that revelation. Ross and Bonnie, so Bonnie shows up and everything, and Rachel gets, jealous, and her and Ross are kind of flirting before Bonnie gets there. It's a little bit like, is this going to be a thing again, kind of thing. And Rachel and Ross argue outside, and she basically says, I was mad at you. I didn't stop loving you. And he's like, do you still love me? And she's like, well, do you still love me? And they end up kissing. And how we end season 3 is this kind of cliffhanger of, is Ross going to choose Bonnie or is he going to choose Rachel? So now we're on season 4. And we start season 4 off, obviously, where we left it, in the beach house. And Ross goes in and he basically chooses Rachel. He breaks up with Bonnie and he chooses Rachel. And Rachel says, I've written you this letter and I, need you to read it and let me know if it does or it doesn't. And it's 18 pages front and back, and he falls asleep and he doesn't read the whole letter. So when Rachel comes down in the morning, she's like, well, does it or doesn't it? And he says that it does, and she's really happy, and they make up. But then when he actually reads the letter, the question was, does it seem like something you can do to take accountability for everything that went wrong in our relationship? Does that seem like something you can do? Does it? And he obviously said that it does before he really knew what he was saying it does too, right? Chandler and Joey are kind of in the boat of, well, you wanted Rachel back, you've got Rachel back, like, surely, just let it go. But Ross can't let it go. They end up fighting again and break up once again. Chandler goes to have lunch with Rachel at Bloomingdale's, and then he walks her back to the office. And when he's there at the office, he meets Rachel's boss, Joanna, and they kind of hit it off and they go on a date, but then he doesn't actually like her. And Rachel keeps saying, break up with her and all this stuff. It kind of creates a bit of tension between Rachel and Chandler. And eventually he does break up with her, but then they end up hooking up again a couple of episodes down the line. And then Joanna actually dies. So that puts a stop to that. When Joanna dies, she was supposed to be giving Rachel this big promotion, but she didn't actually put it through before she died, which means that Rachel gets moved to a different department and she is now basically a personal shopper. And when she becomes a personal shopper, one of her first clients is Joshua, or is she like, what does she say? She's like, Joshua. That's how she says it, Joshua. And dear Lord, does she go to embarrassing lengths to impress this man. It is horrific. It is genuinely a horrific watch. Like the Rachel of season 1 would have never. Like the Rachel of, season 1, season 2, she would have never. The lows she stooped to for this man, it was just embarrassing. So, Joshua. While Rachel is, doing her personal shopping stuff, her boss, Mr. Waltham, asked her if she would take his niece Emily, who's visiting from London, to the theatre or something. And she says yes, but then she gets the opportunity to go to this club opening that Joshua is going to. So she instead asks Ross if he would take Emily to the theatre for her. And Ross agrees and he says, you know what, fine, I'll go. And that is when we meet Emily Waltham. Now, Emily and Ross hit it off from the beginning. They go to this bed and breakfast in Vermont, and they're absolutely head over heels for each other right from the get-go, which makes Rachel a bit jealous. And I think then makes her even more embarrassingly trying to get with Joshua so that her and Ross can be on the same level, right? So yeah, him and Emily get really close, but Emily has to keep going back to London because she lives there. So she can only visit Ross for kind of short periods of time and everything. And she says, maybe it would make sense for me to move here if we were getting married, but I just don't know if it's really worth me moving here. And he's like, well then, let's get married. Yep. He proposes to Emily. But we're going to take a little break from that for a second. And we're going to move over to the lovely Joey and Chandler. So Joey starts dating a girl called Kathy, and she is so gorgeous. Like, Kathy is one of my absolute faves. She's such an icon. So yeah, Joey is dating Kathy, but he's not that serious about her. We know Joey, we know him, we know his games, and he's also dating somebody else, I think like Casey or something at the same time. And Chandler starts speaking to Kathy, you know, she's around the house, and they like watch TV together like late at night and things, and they start really bonding, and Chandler starts really falling for her and like truly falling in love with her, like catching feelings quick. And Chandler kind of, you know, tries to convince Joey that he should stay with Casey and break up with Kathy, but he decides to stay with Kathy. Then one night while Joey is out with somebody else, while Joey's out with another girl, Kathy comes over. I can't remember why. I think it was like to see Joey, but Chandler's like, oh, he's not here. So she's like, oh, just wait. She ends up giving Chandler a haircut, and they end up kissing. And they're like, this, you know, this was bad. Like, we can't do that and stuff. So then she ends up leaving. Now, I think Kathy then breaks up with Joey. And Chandler, even for her birthday, like gets her a copy of her favorite book, The Velveteen Rabbit, and gets it like signed and everything, and it's so adorable. But he fully broached her, okay? I coined this term. I mean, I didn't really coin it because I didn't come up with it, but like I call it broaching. I really hope that doesn't mean something horrific on Urban Dictionary already, but remember when Ross bought Rachel the really expensive brooch? Yeah. If someone in your life gets you a really, really thoughtful gift when they don't know you that well, like they're not your best friend or anything, they're broaching you, okay? They are telling you how they feel about you through the form of gift. And that is exactly what Chandler does to Kathy. He broaches her. When he gives her that, he gives it to Joey to give to her, but she knows it's from him, right? Like, that was a brooch scenario. Like, he knew that she would love it, and it showed how much he cared about her, right? So anyway, so then Kathy breaks up with Joey, and Joey doesn't really understand. And, you know, Joey's like, I think there's another guy. And Chandler's like, it's me. I'm the other guy. And Joey is so pissed. He is pissed. This is like the second big rift we see in their friendship because they're best buddies, right? The first rift was when Joey moved out. But now this is even bigger than that. This is proper like feud style, right? So Chandler feels really bad about this. And, you know, Joey is like, you can't see her again. And, you know, it's going to take ages to earn back my trust. And how Joey says that Chandler can earn back his trust is by sitting in this box and not speaking. I can't even remember how long it was for, just until Joey decided to let him out. And Kathy comes over to say bye to Chandler. She's like, you know, I'm going to stay at my parents for, a while. And it's a shame that we didn't actually get to be together. And Joey feels bad, bless him, and he lets Chandler out of the box. And it's like, go get her. So then Chandler and Kathy start dating for a little while. I can't remember how long they date exactly. But I think it's for like a good few episodes. And then Kathy is also an actor, and she starts acting in this play. And when Chandler goes to watch it, it's like a very raunchy play, okay? But, you know, she's an actress, that's her job. And Joey says this kind of like theory. He's like, oh, if people have no chemistry on stage, it's probably because they're actually doing it backstage. And Chandler thinks there's no chemistry and assumes that Kathy is cheating on him and literally accuses her of cheating on him. So then everyone's like, you dumbass, why have you done that? But then she actually does cheat on him because, well, I don't know if she actually like cheats on him or if they'd broken up. I can't remember exactly. But basically, she then does sleep with this guy after Chandler accused her and they argued and everything. So he then, breaks up with her, and that's the end of Chandler and Kathy. Joey then gets a job on a Charlton Heston movie and stinks really bad and uses his shower and then gets fired. Chandler is really depressed about Kathy. So the girls like try and cheer him up. They take him to a strip club and everything. And then he kind of, is able to get over it. Oh my God, I forgot about a huge plot point. Okay, it's not huge, like it doesn't affect a lot, but Chandler and Monica have a bet with Monica and Rachel have a bet with Chandler and Joey that they know them better than they do. And they're like, no, we know you better than you know us. Easy. And they have this whole quiz show. It's probably the most iconic scene in this show. It's one of my favorites. I know it literally word for word. And yeah, so they play this game and they lose and they end up swapping apartments. So for the remainder of season 4, I think it is. I don't know if it's the remainder of season 4 or if it's for pretty much the rest of season 4. Chandler and Joey now live in apartment 20 and Rachel and Monica live in apartment 19. So that's just a little side note for you there as well. Now we're getting towards the end of season 4. And we meet Alice. So Frank Jr. comes to Phoebe and is like, I'm in love with my home economics teacher, Alice, which is very weird because Alice is like 60 and he's like 18 and it's very, very dodgy and very, very weird. And initially Phoebe is like, you can't get married, like the age gap is too big, which she was right. But then everyone else kind of is like, no, it's fine. And she ends up accepting them anyway. So they get married. Then they decide they want to have kids. But obviously Alice's eggs are dust. So they're like, if we, put the last few eggs that she has and my sperm, like if we do, can we put our baby into Phoebe? And at first Phoebe kind of hesitates. She's like, I'm not really sure. But then, she speaks with her mum from Montauk, Phoebe, and kind of decides she does want to do that for them. The reason that this whole storyline happened is because Lisa Kudrow, who plays Phoebe, was actually pregnant. And they had to write it into the story, but they weren't ready for any of the friends to become parents yet. So they did it as a surrogate story instead. Phoebe says yes, and she gets pregnant, and they turn out to be triplets. So Phoebe is pregnant with Frank and Alice's babies at the end of season 4. So we're going to go back to Ross and Emily now. So like I said, they're engaged. They decide to get married in London. So for the season finale of season 4, Ross and Emily, Monica, Joey and Chandler all fly to London for the wedding. Phoebe can't fly because she's in her 3rd trimester, so she's not allowed to go. And Rachel realizes that she's still in love with Ross and it's going to be way too hard to watch him get married to someone else, so she stays to look after Phoebe. Phoebe and Rachel are talking and, Rachel's like, no, it would have been too weird. And Phoebe's like, no, it's because you love him. Like, come on. So then Rachel's like, I have to tell him that I love him. So she's fully prepared to stop this man's wedding. So she gets on a flight to London, leaves poor pregnant Phoebe by herself, flies to London, and is basically about to tell Ross that she loves him. But then when she sees him there and she sees, the whole wedding and everything set up, she decides that she can't do it. And instead it's like, oh, I just wanted to, be here to say congratulations and just not miss the wedding. And he thinks that's really sweet. And yeah. Monica is having a rough go of it, bless her heart, because at the rehearsal dinner, someone mistakes her for being Ross's mum. And also she doesn't have a date for the wedding and it's, a whole thing. And Chandler kind of tries to console her. Now we're at the final episode of season 4. So Emily walks down the aisle. Phoebe's on speakerphone. We've got Joey and Chandler up there as well. Monica's everyone's there. And Rachel is watching from the seats. And they do you, Ross, take the Emily to be your lawfully wedded wife? And he says, I take the Rachel. And he's now, my boyfriend, I force him to watch all the shows that I watch, okay? So we've done Pretty Little Liars, we did Gossip Girl, and we did Friends. And he knew of Friends. He hadn't really seen that many episodes, and he knew loose things. He knew that Monica and Chandler are a couple. He knew that Ross and Rachel are a couple, but he didn't know the proper ins and outs. He didn't even know about Emma. So he had no idea that Ross was going to say Rachel's name, and his jaw dropped. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could experience that for the first time. Because when I watched Friends for the first time, my dad had all of the box sets and I would just watch random ones. So I didn't watch it all in order or and my parents watched it as it was coming out weekly. And I'm like, that must have just been so good. The drama of this when it first happened, because it's a jaw dropping moment. It's so good. that is where we leave season 4. So season 5, we obviously start season 5 in London still, and Rachel's kind of like, what does that mean? Does that mean that he loves me? But Ross is kind of like brushing it off as like, no, it was just a mistake. I just saw Rachel there, so I just said her name, and like, Emily's pissed. She's not having it. We also see, oh my God, I didn't even mention this. Like I said, Monica was having a rough night. She had gotten drunk, and so had Chandler. She went to Chandler's room, and her and Chandler end up having sex again. This season 4 finale was so good because like Ross saying Rachel's name like at his own wedding, Monica and Chandler like sleeping together, like the reveal of that must have been crazy. Like I wish I could have not known that they were going to get together and just see that episode for the first time when everyone was like them together. Such good shit. So they hook up. Anyway, now we're in season 5 and they're like, we can't do that again. Like, we're good friends. We're just going to hook up, you know, while we're in London. And then once we go back to New York, it's going to be done. Ross is trying to convince Emily to still go on their honeymoon because they still get married because she's like, it would have been too embarrassing to not get married, even though I'm like, absolutely not. I would have just left, but whatever. Weird logic. Monica, Chandler, and Joey fly back to New York after the wedding. Ross is waiting for Emily to go on their honeymoon, and Rachel shows up and she's like, oh, I've got a late flight and stuff, like, enjoy your honeymoon. And he's like, well, I don't think Emily's coming, so do you want to come? Like, we'll go to Greece together. So she's like, you know what? Sure. And so she goes and gets on the plane. Then Emily shows up and is obviously sees Rachel and Ross going on their honeymoon together and is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And leaves, and Ross runs to go after her, and Rachel ends up going to Greece by herself, and she's not happy about it. Oh, also, I forgot to say that in season 3, to get back at Ross, Rachel actually does go on a date with Mark, and they kiss, I'm pretty sure. But she realizes it's just like to spite Ross, and nothing happens there afterwards. We don't really see Emily. We see Ross like repeatedly trying to fix it and stuff. We see her only ever from the waist up and like on the phone in London. And ultimately, you know, she says, well, if you want us to be together, you can't see Rachel again. And Ross has to decide if that's something he wants to do. And he decides it is. So he tells Rachel he can't see her anymore. And that is a whole thing. But ultimately, Emily decides that she can't trust Ross, and they decide to get a divorce. And I believe Emily was actually supposed to be a bigger character, and this wasn't supposed to be how it played out. But the actress who played Emily, I can't remember her name now, but she got pregnant. And you can just so tell. It's one of my skills. I can easily pick out when an actress is pregnant. I'm like, they are hiding that bump. Like, you can see like in the face, they're glowing, like they got that pregnancy glow. It's like that person is pregnant. So the actress that played Emily was pregnant. That's why you only ever see her from like the waist up, and she's kind of superimposed because they filmed her scenes. She was in London, so they filmed her scenes there and then just kind of put them into the show. And that's kind of why we never see her again. She didn't really, they just had to write her out basically. Rachel does end up telling Ross that she's still in love with him, but then they're both kind of like, well, I'm getting divorced, so it's not really a good time for us to start dating again. So they don't start dating again. Really, the only big love interest for the rest of season 5, to be fair, is we get Gary, the police officer. So once they all come back from London, Phoebe ends up giving birth to the triplets and giving them away to Frank and Alice, which is really sad because she becomes quite attached to them. And the scene when she says goodbye to them honestly breaks my heart. So after that, Phoebe meets Gary, and he's a cop, and they begin dating. They're really into each other, and they even move in together. But Phoebe breaks it off with him when he shoots a bird. Yeah. And honestly, same queen. Don't blame me on that one. Aside from that, I feel like we don't really get any big love interests in season 5. For like, you know, in terms of new people. Season 5 has definitely got a big focus on Monica and Chandler because now they've come back from London. They're dating in secret and they're hiding it from the other friends because they don't want them to know yet. They want to make sure this is like real between them before they start telling people. Joey is actually the first to figure out that they're dating and they ask him to help hide it, which he does for a while. Then Rachel finds out. Then Phoebe finds out when she's with Rachel and Rachel's like, no, I know, like, and stuff. So all three of them know now. And they basically force Monica and Chandler into admitting that they're together. He says that he loves her. And then they realize that it's like actually a full-blown relationship here. They're not just like hooking up. And Ross is then the last person to find out. And then they're out in the open and they are, fully dating. We're getting towards the end of season 5. And at the end of season 5, Joey gets what he calls his, kind of like big break. He gets a role in a movie. So he goes to Vegas to film this movie. He and Chandler are talking and Chandler kind of lets it slip that he doesn't think this is going to be Joey's big break. And Joey thinks Chandler isn't supporting him. So he kicks Chandler out on the bridge. And Chandler, walks back and Joey goes to Vegas alone. And when, Chandler kind of tells them all about this, they're like, bruh, like that was a bit rough. Monica then surprises Chandler with, for their 1-year anniversary, to go to Vegas to surprise Joey and just have a bit of an anniversary trip. Phoebe overhears this and it's like, well, I want to go because I didn't get to go to London. So now we're going to do a big group trip together. Phoebe then also invites Rachel and Ross, so their poor anniversary trip turns into like a group trip. And they don't know that Joey was actually, his movie was shut down, so he's just working in Vegas, right? So they go to surprise him, but then realize actually his movie is off. Just before they go on this trip, Monica has lunch with Rich. We don't actually see him, but Monica has lunch with Richard. And she says, I didn't feel anything. Like I went and I had lunch with him, but it just made me realize how much I love Chandler. But she doesn't tell Chandler about it. Phoebe then accidentally lets it slip to Chandler while they're on the plane, which upsets Chandler and kind of ruins their anniversary. And they like argue and not almost break up, but like it's kind of on the brink of that, right? So these two are fighting. And Phoebe and Joey are basically just having a laugh in Vegas. That's pretty much all they're doing for this season finale. Rachel has the apartment to herself. So she, dances around naked. She has, a little girl's night in. Ross sees this and thinks that's her putting the moves on him. And he goes over and is kind of like, are we doing this? And she's like, absolutely not. So he's embarrassed and she's like, oh, that was so embarrassing for you. I just don't get embarrassed. So then they get into this competition of who can embarrass the other person. And it results in Ross drawing on her face with a Sharpie and then they can't get it off. So then they're like arguing, but then they both decide to get absolutely hammered. And they end up getting married. Yep. So Chandler and Monica are like, keep seeing these signs that they should get married. And they're like, oh, maybe we should. And they decide to just go through with it and just get married. So they go to the chapel to get married. But then Rachel and Ross come out of the chapel having just gotten married. And that is where we finish season 5. Rachel and Ross are married. We don't know if they're actually back together, if it's just a drunken mistake. We know that Monica and Chandler were about to get married. So is that still happening? Like, what's the deal there? And Phoebe and Joey are just, having fun. A couple things that I forgot about that I just remembered just now. So in season 5, we also have Rachel and Monica want their apartment back from Chandler and Joey. And actually, that might even be in season 4. Actually, I think that's season 4. Anyway, Rachel and Monica kiss in front of Chandler and Joey to get their apartment back. The one with Vegas, which is a 2-parter episode, is the finale of season 5. So that's where we're at the end of season 5. So now we're going to move on to season 6. Obviously, Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Phoebe are like, Ross and Rachel just got married. In the morning, Ross and Rachel don't even remember getting married. They don't remember it at all.
We weren't gonna miss our friends getting married.
Who got married?
You did?
And then when they realize, they're like, well, we're going to have to get a divorce. So then they all travel back from Vegas, Monica and Chandler are like, you know what, that was a little bit crazy there. That was a little bit crazy. Maybe we shouldn't get married. Like, that's a bit mad. So they decide, you know, they are going to take a step forward, but just not that far forward. And they're going to move in together. Monica has to tell Rachel that she has to move out, and Chandler has to tell Joey that he is going to move out, which is so sad. Like, because they're just such sweet friendships. Like, Rachel and Monica and Chandler and Joey are such core friendships. They're so, so good. I absolutely adore them. And part of the real charm is them being roommates. And I feel like it's such a shift in dynamic when they do move. Ross is having this whole dilemma because he doesn't want to be divorced 3 times. He's like, I can't do it. I won't do it. I won't be divorced three times. It just is not happening. Okay? It's not happening. And so he doesn't get the divorce. They find out they can get an annulment because it, you know, Vegas and whatever, but he still doesn't get the annulment. He still doesn't get it. And they are still married. Rachel then finds out they're still married and is fuming at him and does this funny, you know, form, and basically all this stuff happens and they just end up getting divorced anyway. Monica and Chandler move in together. Rachel moves in with Phoebe and Joey is on his ones now. So Joey's looking for another roommate and he finds Janine. Oh, be real. Do you want to be in my be real? Joey lets Janine move in. Now, Janine is an Australian dancer and he obviously chooses her because he thinks she's attractive. And everyone's like, you can't date her. That's bad. Turns out she's not even interested in him anyway, but he, you know, has this crush on her, yada, yada. We do that back and forth for a couple episodes. And then they admit that they both like each other and they end up kissing and they start dating. They date for, I don't even think it's that long, to be honest. They date for a couple of episodes and then Janine and Joey go on a double date with Chandler and Monica. And Janine is basically mean about them, says she doesn't like them. And Joey ends up choosing Chandler and Monica over Janine and he breaks up with Janine and Janine moves out. So Rachel moves in with Phoebe and hilarity ensues. I feel like this is such a fun little duo and we just don't really see them that much. But like we have this whole thing where Rachel wants to go running, but Phoebe runs funny, so she doesn't want to run with her. We have another one where Phoebe hates Pottery Barn, but Rachel loves Pottery Barn, so she furnishes the whole apartment with Pottery Barn, but lies to her and says that it's from like a flea market. And like a couple other things. We also get the Unagi episode when these two live together, which is really a really fun one as well. Ross finds out that Emily is getting married to somebody else, which is pretty wild. So there's that. We also have, I realized I didn't even say anything about Joshua. Basically, the idea that Emily and Ross are going to get married freaks Rachel out so much that she basically proposes to Joshua, even though his divorce isn't final and they've only been dating for like 2 weeks, and basically freaks him out. And then she opens the door to him in a wedding dress, which really puts the nail in the coffin. So they broke up. I forgot to say that. So Monica and Chandler are now living together. For the Thanksgiving episode, Judy and Jack come over, but Monica hasn't told them about her relationship with Chandler yet because they don't like Chandler. We find out that that's because Ross lied to them when he was smoking pot and told them that it was Chandler. So this whole time they've thought basically that he was a stoner and they didn't like him for it. So Ross, you know, comes clean and they like Chandler and they announce, you know, their relationship. Is season 6 the Susan Sarandon season? I can't remember. That might be season 7, actually. I think that might be season 7. So, a kind of another big-ish love interest that we have. It comes in the form of Elizabeth. At this point, Ross is a lecturer at NYU for paleontology or whatever it is. I can't remember. And basically, he gets a student evaluation that says that he's cute or like he's a hottie or something. And he finds out that it's from a student called Elizabeth. And they begin dating. It's against the rules of the uni, so they're kind of dating in secret. Ross then meets Elizabeth's father, who is played by Bruce Willis. Paul, that's it. So he meets Paul, and Paul is Elizabeth's dad. And Paul does not like Ross. Honestly, fairs, because this relationship is weird. But you know who Paul does like? He likes Rachel. So he and Rachel begin dating while Elizabeth and Ross are dating. But then Rachel ends up breaking up with Paul because he's too emotional. And Ross ends up breaking up with Elizabeth because he thinks, you know, she's just not like mature enough for him, or they're just not really going to work. Like there's not really a future there. So then he breaks up with her as well. Phoebe takes Monica and Rachel to this like museum thing in this like beautiful hall, and they are showing people around and being like, oh, you can get married here and stuff. And Monica's like, you know, this would be a beautiful place to get married. And Rachel's like, oh, why don't you just put your name down, because there's like a 3-year waiting list. So by that time, you know, hopefully you and Chandler will be engaged and then you can use it. But if you're not engaged, then you just don't use it. So Monica puts her name down. And then Hildy, I believe her name is, from the place, rings up and she's like, oh, if you're, you know, still interested in using our facilities for the Gelabing wedding, you know, and all this stuff. And Chandler freaks out because, as we know, Chandler has a history of commitment panic and commitment issues. So Monica says to him, like, there's absolutely nothing by it. Like, they just said, put your name down for fun. Like, there's no pressure. I know that you need time and you're not ready to get married. Like, it's all good. I promise you it is all good. But then, I love it. I love Monica and Chandler so much. When Monica leaves, Phoebe's like, oh, did she buy it? And Chandler reveals to Phoebe, well, Chandler reveals to us, the audience, that he is going to propose to Monica. He is going to propose to her. And he and Chandler and Phoebe go and they pick out the ring, and it's really beautiful. It's like a sapphire ring. And it's really gorgeous. And honestly, so Chandler leaves Phoebe with the ring to go and get his credit card. And Phoebe gets stuck in the jail and some other guy buys it. And it's absolutely hilarious. And the scene where Chandler and Phoebe go and try and get this ring back from this guy, honestly sends me. It's so funny.
After this, we should solve crimes.
Yeah.
Do you want to break a dying woman's heart? My spirit is going to wander the netherworld for all eternity.
Okay, that's enough, honey. Hey, I'm marrying a dead woman.
But they end up getting the ring back. And then Chandler tells Rachel and he tells Ross and Joey that he's going to propose. And obviously everyone's very excited. It's very exciting. And that brings us to the season 6 season finale. And Chandler's plan is basically to hammer it home that he does not want to get married, and then it'll be even more of a surprise when he does actually propose. But it backfires because Monica's like, you know, am I just in a dead-end relationship, like if he doesn't want to get married? And who shows up? Richard shows up, your big tree. And he shows up and basically says to Monica, I am willing to give you those things. He's like, I want to marry you. I want to have kids with you. Like, let you go was the stupidest decision I ever made. And she's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, fucking hell. And she kind of goes over to his apartment and is like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I want Chandler to just, you know, grow up and all this stuff. And, you know, she leaves. And Chandler then... Joey says to Chandler, he's like, look, I tried to explain everything to Monica, but I've been looking for you. Like, Richard has said all this stuff. So then Chandler's freaking out and he's like, I've ruined it, you know. And Chandler goes to Richard and is like, you had your chance with her. Like, this isn't fair.
Where is she? I'm not scared of you.
She's not here. And please come in.
You made my girlfriend think! I was working until you showed up, you big tree. You are a good guy.
I know. I hate that.
And Richard basically says, look, Monica is amazing. Don't blow this. Like, don't let her go. So Chandler goes to try and find her. And Joey initially kind of like lies to him and is like, oh, she left. And Chandler's like, I can't believe, you know, I messed this up. But when he goes into the apartment, Monica's in there. with all the candles, and it's just so he comes in and she's got the candles and everything, and she knows that he was going to propose, and then she starts proposing to him, but then she gets too emotional, so then he takes over. Their proposal is just it is gorgeous. It's so beautiful. I love it so much because it's just so intimate. I feel like a lot of times in movies and TV shows, the proposals are these huge, gestures, and it was just so them, and it was so sweet, and just what they said to each other as well was just so, it'll make me cry. Most times it'll make me cry. That is where we finish season 7, is with Monica and Chandler getting engaged. Okay, so now we're moving on to season 8. So now we're going to move on to season 8. Season 8, where do we even begin? So Monica's like, she's planning her wedding. It's all that good fun stuff. But season 8 actually picks up right where we left off. And we have Rachel stealing Monica's thunder. So it's the night of, obviously, their engagement. They want to celebrate, but then Ross and Rachel kiss in the hallway, and Monica gets really upset, being like, why couldn't you have just given me this one night that's just mine? But then they don't end up getting back together or anything. It was just a bit of a kiss. Then, Monica's in full-blown, planning her wedding. She goes and gets her wedding dress, which is absolutely gorgeous, but then she has to give it up because this other girl wants her dress, and she either has to pick the dress that she wants or the band that Chandler wants, and she ends up picking the band that Chandler wants, which is, again, really sweet. So I really loved that storyline as well. Chandler and Monica decide to let Joey officiate their wedding so that he can kind of be in the wedding and be a part of the wedding, which I thought was really sweet because Ross is Chandler's best man. They decide that Rachel is going to be Monica's maid of honor, because it just means a lot more to her than it does to Phoebe. But then they decide a system where Monica will be Phoebe's maid of honor, and then Phoebe will be Rachel's eventual maid of honor one day, which I thought was a really cute way of doing it. I can't really think of my... I feel like I thought I knew Friends so incredibly well, and I'm sure there are like so many little storylines I'm forgetting, but I'm like, are they worth mentioning? Do you know what I mean? Rachel leaves her job and she gets a job at Ralph Lauren. And part of her job there is she gets to hire an assistant, and she hires the cute assistant, Tag Jones. And so Rachel starts dating Tag, her assistant. She dates him for a little while, and then they have the episode where they all turn 30, and she kind of realizes that she doesn't know if Tag is really the best fit for her at this point in her life, because he's like 24 and she's 30, and she's kind of thinking, if I want to get my sort of life plan, if you will, started, then I need to get, she's like, well, I want to have, kids by the time I'm 35. I want to have at least one kid by the time I'm 35. So then I want to be married to the guy for like a year and a half. And then I want to be, engaged to the guy for like a year and a half before we start, planning for the wedding, before we get engaged. And then I want to know the guy for like a year. So I really need to meet the guy by the time I'm 30. And she's like, is Tag the guy? And she feels like he's not. So she ends things with him. We also have Monica has a lot more guests that she's inviting, a lot of red pins, if you will, to the wedding. And Chandler's kind of like, he's only got a couple little blue pins, and Monica's like, how come we aren't inviting your dad to the wedding? And Chandler's like, we just have a really strained relationship. And Monica convinces him to go to Vegas. Viva Las Vegas is the show that he does over there. And he's a drag queen, I'm pretty sure. I think he's a drag queen because they always refer to like him as him. They never use female pronouns, I'm pretty sure. So I'm not sure if Chandler's dad is actually transgender or if he just he just dresses. You know what I mean? I don't really know. I feel like because at that kind of time, that was definitely, the lines were a bit more blurred there, and they make a lot of jokes which definitely don't land today and can feel quite insensitive, that it doesn't surprise me that that was all a bit clouded and wasn't really handled that well. So I'm not entirely sure on that. If anyone's like confirmed it or anything like that, then please let me know in the comments. But they all refer to him as he, so I'm just going to go with he. And they go to see him, and Chandler kind of says, you know, it would mean a lot to me, Dad, if you came to the wedding. And so we kind of get that bit of reconciliation there, because obviously we know from the earlier seasons, Chandler has a strained relationship with his mom as well, and their divorce really affected him. And I think having that better relationship with his mom and having healed this relationship with his dad as he's about to get married was like a really big character development step before actually getting married. Then we get to the day of the wedding, and honestly, this is probably my favorite Friends episode. The two, like Monica and Chandler's wedding, part 1 and part 2, I've seen a million times. I adore these episodes. I don't even know why. They're just so comforting to me. But we have the rehearsal dinner, and Chandler listens to a voicemail, and it's Monica being like, oh, you know, if you called us before Saturday, then you've reached Monica and Chandler. But if you're calling us after Saturday, then you've reached the Bings. And Chandler kind of freaks out because he's like, oh my God, we're going to be the Bings. And the Bings have terrible marriages. Like, we're going to be doomed. Like, we can't be the Bings. Like, it's all kind of setting in for him that this is like real now. So after the rehearsal dinner, he runs away. He leaves a note saying that he, you know, to tell Monica that he's sorry. And Rachel, Ross, and Phoebe are kind of like, right, we're going to have to try and sort this out.
Tell Monica I'm sorry. Tell her yourself. Maybe he was writing to tell her that he's changed his name.
He freaked out and left.
Don't be so negative. God, isn't it possible that sorry is sitting in there right now?
Joey is on the set for his World War I movie that he is in. So he's preoccupied. And they've also told him that he's going to have to work on the day of the wedding. So he's got his own issues going on. So Rachel's tasked with keeping Monica distracted on the morning of her wedding, while Phoebe and Ross go out and look for Chandler.
Oh, good God, I've fallen down. What's going on?
And they eventually find him in his office, and they kind of convince him to come back and, you know, just take it one step at a time, that it seems really scary when it's a whole huge thing. But if you just, you know, one step at a time, we're going to make it through. So he decides to come back, and they don't end up having to tell Monica that, you know, he left.
We can't find Chandler.
Vest.
In conjunction with this, Rachel and Phoebe find a pregnancy test in Monica's like trash can, the Americans call it, in Monica's bin, in her bathroom. And it's a positive pregnancy test. So Phoebe is like, oh my God, Monica's pregnant. Rachel doesn't really say anything, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And she's like, oh, you know, like, it must be, I guess, and just kind of like goes along with it. So they think that Monica is also pregnant. So we're carrying that whole thing around as well.
Do you know what kind of birth control she was using? No, why? Just for the future. This is hardly a commercial for it.
So we go to the venue, and Ross is, you know, with Chandler and stuff. And Chandler's like, you know, I need to take a break. He goes out for a smoke break, and he overhears Rachel and Phoebe talking about the fact that Monica is pregnant. So he finds out now. So he's like, oh God. He decides he's okay with it, and he ends up telling Ross as well. And Ross is like, oh my God, you know, so they all at this point think that Monica's pregnant.
I thought anything that can fit into this can't be scary.
You obviously didn't see Chucky 3.
Joey manages to get out of the movie just in time, but not in time to change. So he comes and officiates the wedding in his World War I movie costume. And they get married, and it's really, really sweet. It's really sweet. The like vows that they do and just their whole wedding is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. The last kind of scene of season 7 is Phoebe saying to Rachel, you know, and I can't believe they're going to have a baby. And it zooms in on Rachel, and it's like, yeah. So it like hints that actually the baby is Rachel's. The baby isn't Monica's. Now we're on to season 8. So once again, we pick up right where we left off at Monica and Chandler's wedding. And Monica, they're kind of congratulating her, and Monica's like, I'm not pregnant. So then, they're like, well, who is? Phoebe realizes that it's Rachel, but she's just not ready to say anything yet. So Phoebe says that she is the one that's pregnant. So then we've got that whole drama going on. We also then have Chandler has slippy shoes, so he can't dance, bless him. Joey is trying to impress this director guy that's there, that's the date of Chandler's mum. And then we have Ross, who isn't trying to impress a girl that he met there called Mona. And to do that, he's, dancing with all the little kids and, trying to seem all cute and stuff, so that she will kind of fall for him. So we're going to put Mona's picture up.
What's your name?
Go.
It's pretty.
Monica and Rachel are talking, about how Phoebe is going to do this on her own and how that's really scary. And Monica clocks that Rachel isn't drinking the champagne and realizes Rachel is the one who's pregnant. And Rachel is like, I just took that one test, so I'm not really sure. So Phoebe goes out and gets her another test. This is one of my favorite scenes, and it honestly will make me cry every time, and I don't even know why. Like, it's just, so emotional. So Rachel takes the test. Phoebe tells her that it's negative, and Rachel, she starts to get emotional, and she's like, how can I be sad over something that I never had? And then Phoebe tells her that actually it is positive, and she is going to have this baby, and it's a really happy moment between the three of them, and I really love that scene. Like I said, Ross is trying to impress Mona, we've got all kinds of other stuff going on, and that's kind of the gist of the wedding, really. And then the next day, they're checking out their hotels. We have this whole thing where they can't find the photos, so Ross and Chandler start retaking photos, and Monica isn't supposed to open any of the presents, but she does. Monica and Phoebe kind of want to know who the dad is, and Rachel's like, look, I'm going to tell the dad today, and then once he knows, I can tell you guys. Joey, thinking that Phoebe is pregnant, like proposes to her and is like, oh my God, I want to help you and with the baby and all this stuff. So Monica's like, it's not Phoebe that's pregnant, it's Rachel. So now Monica, Phoebe, and Joey know that Rachel is pregnant. And they're kind of like, who's the dad? And Joey says, well, this guy had stayed the night and he left this sweater. And he brings out the iconic red sweater and he's like, this is the sweater of the dad. And Phoebe is like, I know who the dad is. And she calls Tag. And Tag is wearing the sweater when they show up. So it's obviously not him. But now Rachel has to explain to him why she's called him here. And Tag is like, we should get back together. But Rachel's like, I'm pregnant. So then Tag's like, well, absolutely not. We're not doing that. So that's the end of Tag. We don't see him again. So it's still like, who is the father of Rachel's baby and all this stuff. And we find out at the end of the episode when Ross comes in and he picks up the sweater and he's like, oh my God, my sweater, I lost this like a month ago. And that's when we realize that Rachel and Ross are having a baby. And then Chandler finds out, and everyone finds out, and it's all fine. And Rachel's actually quite excited that everyone else knows before Ross knows, because now she can kind of talk to them about it. She goes to Ross and tells him, and he's just kind of in utter shock about the whole thing, doesn't react very well, gets more angry about the fact that condoms are only 97% effective, and it's a whole thing. And he apologizes for how he reacted when they go to the doctor's appointment together. And he suggests, they get married. And she's like, is that your answer for everything? Like, no, we don't love each other. We're not going to get married. And again, kind of like similarly to when he found out that Carol was pregnant, he's kind of trying to navigate another pregnancy where it's completely different to, I guess, the way that he pictured he would have kids, like with a wife and with a partner. It's more now like, how do we co-parent together? This is a bit of a, friends having a baby is a bit of a weird situation. We also obviously have the fact that he accidentally taped it, and it proves that Rachel was the one that came onto him, and there's that whole thing. Monica and Chandler go on their honeymoon, and yeah, that's kind of it. So now they're going to have this baby, and Monica and Chandler are newlyweds. Phoebe and Joey are like, everyone's kind of doing stuff. I feel like we should do something. So they decide to do a blind date. So they're going to set each other up on dates. Phoebe sets who's her friend? Is it Mary Alice or Mary Ann or I can't remember what her name is, but basically he finds this girl for Joey that she thinks he'll really like, and Joey completely forgets. So he just says that this guy's called Mike, goes into the coffee house and yells Mike, and Paul Rudd, oh baby, we love Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd stands up and is like, I'm Mike. So then Joey's like, right, come with me, we're going on a blind date. And at first Phoebe's like, oh, this is, nice and stuff. But then she realizes they don't know each other and she's really embarrassed and really upset. And she ends up leaving. Then Mike finds her and says, I was told that I would get a free dinner, which I didn't, but I was told that I would meet a pretty girl, which I did. And I would really like to go out with you again if you'll have me. And she does. So we're going to put Mike's picture up there. Phoebe is dating Mike and things are going well until Ross is basically like, it's so cool that you've never had a serious relationship. Like, you're just so cool for that. And Phoebe's like, oh my God, you're right. I've never had a serious relationship, which really upsets her. And she ends up crying before her date with Mike. And it's a whole thing. And then Ross tries to go to fix it by being like, oh, it was my fault. I made her cry. Like, I'm sorry. And then Mike's like, Phoebe's never had a serious relationship. And then the Vikram storyline is so funny to me. And Ross is like, oh no, she dated this guy called Vikram. And it just does this whole ball of lies. And basically Phoebe has to come clean and be like, no, I haven't been in a serious relationship before. And Mike's like, you know what, I still want to get to know you. Like, I would still like to go out with you. And they kiss. And it's so cute. And I absolutely love Mike and Phoebe. Okay. I love them. I love them. Wait. Oh my God. Wait, no. I've introduced Mike way too early. He's not even in this season. No, that's so embarrassing. Oh, that's so embarrassing. Okay. So we're in season 8 right now, but I've introduced Mike. But Mike's not in it until season 9. So just forget that Mike's here. I've introduced him way too early. Oh, that's so embarrassing. Okay, never mind. Never mind. What else happens in season 8? Aside from Rachel having a baby. Joey gets back on Days of Our Lives. He gets recast as Susan Sarandon's character. And they like hook up and stuff. And yeah, he gets his place back on Days of Our Lives as her character when she dies. And then he gets her brain. Seems about right. So he's kind of back on Days of Our Lives. He's doing well again. Oh, I forgot to mention this as well. There's a fire in Phoebe and Rachel's apartment. So Phoebe moves in with Monica and Chandler, and Rachel moves in with Joey. So Joey is living with Rachel at this point, right? Phoebe is like, since they're newlyweds, I kind of want to give them their space. And Phoebe moves in with Ross. And then they don't really get on when they live together. It doesn't really work. It's a whole thing. And then they find out that their apartment's ready, and Phoebe's worried that Rachel won't want to move back in with her because, she's having so much fun at Joey's. But then when they go back to the apartment, their 2 bedrooms have been changed back into just 1 bedroom. So Phoebe moves back in there by herself, and Rachel still lives with Joey. Now, as Rachel is kind of, she's pregnant, she's thriving, she's living her best, she's living with Joey. Joey starts to develop feelings for her. He gets a bit of a crush on her and starts to, basically develop feelings for her. But he's like, I can't tell her, obviously, because her history with Ross and she's pregnant with his baby. So that would be a bit weird. But he does end up telling Chandler about it, and also kind of Monica. And then Monica, Chandler, and Phoebe all figure out that he's talking about Rachel. So they all know that he has a crush on Rachel, but he hasn't told Rachel or Ross. Then Rachel and Ross find out that they're having a girl, which is super cute. And, Joey's talking to Ross about how... And Ross, not knowing that it's Rachel, is like, you should tell her, how often does this happen to you? So then Joey's like, it's Rachel, and... it's very awkward between Ross and Joey for a little while. And Joey doesn't want Ross to hate him. And then, Ross is like, well, of course I don't hate you. And they make up. And Ross is like, if this is really serious and this is how you feel, then you have to tell Rachel how you feel. And if she feels the same way, who am I to stand in the way, right? And at this time, Ross also is dating Mona. So it's not like he's single. He is seeing Mona and really kind of liking where that's going.
You gave her a key to your apartment? Not just a key. I gave her the only key. I am now a homeless person in a very serious relationship.
They almost broke up when she found out that Rachel was pregnant, because that was a little bit of a bump in the road. But then she was, she was chill. She was chill vibes with that. So Joey decides to tell Rachel how he feels about her, but she is kind of like, I don't love you in that same way, but like, so it's kind of awkward between them for a little while because she kind of does reject him. So it takes a little while for him to kind of get over his feelings for her. Then Mona and Ross break up. Oh, yes, because, okay. So Joey is like, maybe you and Rachel should live together because Ross feels like he's missing out on stuff. Like Joey takes Rachel to the hospital when she has Braxton Hicks contractions. He misses, when she, when the baby kicks for the first time. So Ross is kind of like, feels like he's missing out. So Joey's like, you two should live together. And then, you can have this whole experience together. So she does. Rachel moves in with Ross. So Joey's now living on his own again. And Mona, this is the final straw for Mona. She was like, okay, you're having a baby with your ex. That's one thing. Living with her is another thing. So Mona breaks up with Ross. Season 8 finale. Rachel and Ross, Rachel's late with her pregnancy. She just, she's getting a bit cranky. It's fine. Like, cut her some slack, people. And they kind of, the things that the doctor says is like, oh, if you have sex, that can kind of speed up the labor sometimes. So they were like, right, let's do it. So then Rachel and Ross start kissing and Rachel goes into labor. And just as they are about to leave for the hospital, they have another kiss that feels a bit more emotional, a bit more intimate, like kind of like, are they going to get back together? Like, what's the deal here? Do you know what I mean? And then obviously Monica, Phoebe, Chandler, and Joey all go to the hospital and they're all kind of waiting around for Rachel to have her baby. Here, Monica and oh my God, what's wrong with me? Here, Monica and Chandler decide that they're also ready to have a baby. So they start trying to have a baby at the hospital, wasting no time. Judy tells Ross that he should propose to Rachel and they should be a family and gives him his grandmother's ring to propose to her. Oh, my boyfriend's outside. Phoebe finds this cute guy that she likes at the hospital. And he's staying there. He's got a broken leg. And so she sends Joey in to basically find out if he's a good guy or not. And it turns out that he is, but we never see him again, even though they were kind of cute. They were kind of a vibe. So there's that guy. Then basically it takes ages for Rachel to be 10 centimeters dilated. She sees all these people come and go and have their babies. Even Janice comes in and has a baby. So we get to see Janice again, which is always a good time. And yeah, she ends up having her beautiful baby. She names her Emma because, well, basically Monica said that Emma was one of her names that she would want to name her child. But then when Rachel hears it, she falls in love with it. And Monica basically gifts her the name and lets her use it. Oh, and also Jack catches Monica and Chandler having sex, which is gross. So Ross decides, okay, he's not ready to propose to Rachel, but he does want to see if maybe she wants to start things up again. They had that kiss before she went into labor. So maybe there's a little something, there's room for growth. It's giving slow build, So he's like, right, I'll go and speak to her, right? But Janice gets in there first and is like, you have Ross now, but then he's going to have a new wife, he's going to have other kids, and he, basically you're going to have to do this on your own. And Rachel, this really freaks Rachel out. Then Joey comes in to see Rachel and she's like, oh, could you pass me those tissues? He goes to get some tissues. When he picks up Ross's jacket, the ring falls out that Judy had given him. Joey picks up the ring and opens it and is like, oh my God, he's going to propose to Rachel. Then he turns around and is holding the ring. Rachel thinks he's proposing and says yes. Oh, sorry. She says yes. It's utter madness. She says yes. And then the last thing we see is Ross like walking up to the room. So we're like, oh my God, is he going to walk in on this? Like, what the hell is going on in the House of Commons? End of season 8. Rachel gives birth to Emma. And then Joey proposes to Rachel and she says yes. What the fuck? Anyway, moving on. Now on to season 9. So once again, we pick up exactly where we left off at the end of season 8. And Rachel says yes, and Joey's like, oh, that's not really what I meant. And then, everyone else comes in and basically all this stuff happens, and Joey doesn't get the chance to explain to Rachel in time that he actually wasn't proposing before Ross finds out, and it's a whole big misunderstanding. But because Ross knows that she said yes to Joey, he doesn't want to be just anybody that she's going to say yes to, so they don't end up getting back together. And things are really awkward between Joey and Ross, and he even like tries to punch him at one point, but then he breaks his hand. It's a whole thing. And yeah, so that's basically that. But now we have little Emma, who is obviously related to Rachel, to Ross, and also to Ben, which is such a shame because we never see them interact, but I would have loved to have seen them meet each other. That would have been so cute. Season 9 is trucking along. I don't remember a lot of what happens in season 9. Chandler and Monica, they're trying to have their baby. It's just not really working. They try, like tracking when Monica's ovulating and everything, and it's just not happening for them. And they go to a fertility clinic, and they basically find out that Monica has an inhospitable environment and Chandler has, I can't remember. He's basically got slow swimmers. So basically the combination of the two of them is just not really going to work. They're probably not ever going to be able to have children together, which is so sad because obviously the only thing Monica's ever wanted to be throughout this whole series since season 1 is a mum. So they think about maybe a sperm donor. They think about that for a little bit, and then they decide ultimately to go with adoption. Phoebe meets Mike. So everything that I told you about Mike that I thought for a second happened in season 8 happened in season 9. So we've done the blind date and now they're together. We've had the whole Vikram thing and now they're dating. And they're really cute, and they get to the point of wanting to move in together until Mike expresses that he doesn't want to get married. And Phoebe's like, at first she's kind of okay with it, and then she realizes no, she actually does want to get married. She wants the things that she feels are normal. She's like, I grew up on the street. I didn't have my parents around and things were really hard for me. I didn't get the normal high school experience or any normal experiences. So things like having kids, having a big wedding, having all those things that quote unquote normal people have, like the kind of standard human experience, she actually does really want those things and Mike doesn't. So they end up breaking up, which is really, really sad. Then actually, I forgot something else. So while Mike and Phoebe are dating, David comes back. David's back in the picture and he and Phoebe kiss, but ultimately she decides she wants to be with Mike, right? She decided she wanted to be with Mike. So she's already chosen Mike over David. Then the whole thing with Mike happens. She ends up meeting his parents as well. And he says he loves her and then they're going to move in and then they break up. Okay? Then they break up. Now, Ross is in charge of showing these 2 professors around New York. One is called Charlie and one's something else. I can't remember. It's this older man. And when he meets Charlie, he's absolutely infatuated her, has a huge crush on her, wants to get to know her, wants to date her. But then at the soap opera roof party that Joey hosts, Joey actually ends up hooking up with her instead and begins dating her. So here's Charlie down here and she is dating Joey. Then Rachel realizes that she is starting to have feelings for Joey now and kind of confides in Monica and Phoebe about this. And they're like, you really shouldn't do anything. He's dating Charlie now. Like, just leave it. Then we get to season 9 finale. I feel like I'm speeding through these now, but like, there's not really a lot going on. Like, I feel like the big chunks of storylines came in the middle. We started off with like episode to episode storylines. Then we went into more multiple episode, big season arcs. Now I feel like we're back again to more episode by episode things. So anyway, Barbados. Ross is like, I have a big paleontology speech. I'm the keynote speaker, Soleil, at this paleontology thing in Barbados. So all the gang are like, yep, we'll go. Charlie's going to come as well. So they're all going to fly there, right? Now, Phoebe bumps into David again. And David's like, I'm here. Like, you know, Mintz didn't work out. I'm here in New York permanently. And they start dating again, even though it's obvious she's still in love with Mike. And so she takes David to Barbados. Joey takes Charlie. Monica and Chandler go together. Rachel comes on her own, and obviously Ross as well. Now, when they're there, it all gets all kinds of kerfuddled, okay? Because Ross and Charlie realize they have feelings for each other, and they actually kiss while she's still with Joey. Rachel basically lets it slip to Joey that she likes him now as well, and they end up kissing as well. David decides he's going to propose to Phoebe. The clarity is quite poor. The ring is not great, but that's okay. You know, he's a scientist. He's got to work for his money.
Isn't an engagement ring supposed to have a diamond?
That's 1/70th of a carat. And the clarity is quite poor.
And he decides he's going to propose to Phoebe. Monica is like, this cannot happen. And she tells Mike, look, David's going to propose. So you need to get your shit together, boy, okay? Because I'm not having it. I'm not having to marry the wrong man. So Mike shows up in Barbados and basically says, and then he proposes in the middle of David's proposal. And Phoebe says no to Mike's proposal and is like, you know, I didn't need a proposal from you. I just needed to know that we were heading somewhere, that like that was in the cards one day. So she breaks things off with David and she gets back together with Mike. Then Rachel ends up kissing Joey and Ross ends up kissing Charlie, and that is where we leave season 9. We're now into season 10, the big season 10, the final season. Ross decides that he wants to be with Charlie. Charlie breaks up with Joey, and Joey basically gives Ross and Charlie permission to date, so they're all good. But then Joey chickens out of asking Ross for permission to date Rachel, so these guys are still kissing and all that in secret. Phoebe and Mike are back together. Now, we're back in New York. Everything's cool, everything's Gucci.
I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
Ross walks in on Rachel and Joey dating, and he has his whole I'm fine thing. We all know about that. And he pretends that he's okay with it, even though he's really not. And then he decides, you know, maybe I will just have to be okay with it. But it's fine because Rachel and Joey realize they can't actually like have sex with each other. Like they just feel a bit too weird. And them dating isn't really working. And they feel like maybe they're just too good of friends to ruin it by dating. And as you can imagine, everyone went completely nuts over this ship. People hate it. People really like it. They think she should have ended up with Joey, you know, instead. And I want to know your opinions in the comments. Are you a Rachel and Ross, or are you a Rachel and Joey? Let me know. Okay, let me know. Phoebe and Mike are doing really good. They're doing, you know, really well. A couple, you know, weeks go by. It's kind of hard to tell how much time passes in season 10 because it's a shorter season. It's like 6 or maybe even 10 episodes, I think, less than a normal season would be. So things are a bit fast paced. And Mike decides he's going to propose to Phoebe. He tries to propose to her in a couple different ways and it just doesn't really work out. Then she decides she's going to propose to him and that goes terribly as well. And finally, he proposes to her just properly and it's really, really sweet and I love it. So these two are now engaged. Monica and Chandler have applied to adoption agencies. They're waiting to kind of hear back on the Thanksgiving episode. Oh my God, don't. I can actually cry thinking about it. So they go and on the Thanksgiving episode, they get a call to say that there's a baby waiting for them. Oh my God, don't. It's so emotional. It's so good. I will cry every time. That one I will cry every time. Then they go to, I can't remember where they went, New Jersey or something? They went somewhere to meet this mum who is carrying this baby and her name is Erica. She's played by Anna Faris. And initially, the adoption agency had messed it up. So they had called Monica and Chandler by accident when Erica had actually chosen a different couple. And Monica and Chandler go along with it. You know, and Monica's like, well, just tell her that we are these people because, you know, we really want this baby. No one's going to love this baby more than us. And Chandler's like, well, you know, this woman is giving up her child. She needs to know that it's going to who she wants it to go to, right? And he talks to Erica and it literally, oh my God, it's just, I could cry. I cry every time. And he says, you know, that Monica's a mother without a baby. And it's just so true. She's always wanted to be a mum. She just always wanted to be a mum. And so Erica agrees to let them adopt her baby, which is so cute. So yeah. And then Erica comes to New York to visit them, so that she knows all the doctors and everything by the time that she's going to go into labor. Charlie and Ross eventually break up because she is still in love with her ex-boyfriend, Benjamin Hobart, Benji. So yeah, Charlie and Ross end up breaking up. Then Phoebe and Mike get married, which is so freaking cute. I absolutely love it. They get married in the snow, in the street, because it was snowed in, so they couldn't get to their venue, so they decided to get married in the street. And Chandler gives Phoebe away, and Joey officiates the wedding, and it's just chef's kiss. It is just gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Oh, and also Rachel dates a guy called Gavin. I forgot about him. She dates a guy called Gavin. Well, kisses him. She doesn't really date him. A guy from her work kisses him, and Ross is upset by that. Ross also, you know, this guy calls for Rachel that she gave her number to, and Ross purposely doesn't give her the message. And so because of this, Ross has basically pissed Rachel off, and she's like, you can't be deciding things for me. So Rachel moves out. So at this point, towards the end of the season, Rachel is living with Joey again, and Ross is living by himself. And Phoebe is living with Mike. So yeah, Phoebe and Mike are now married, which is so freaking cute. We have Rachel's dad almost dies. He has a heart attack. And then Rachel and Ross almost get together again, and then they don't. Like, it's kind of a bit like, oh, okay. And then finally, Rachel gets offered this really great job in Paris, this amazing fashion job. You know, it's great money, but Ross is obviously sad that she's going to be moving, and everyone's kind of sad that she's going to be leaving. Monica and Chandler also buy their first house because they're like, you know, we don't really want to raise a kid in the city, so they're going to be leaving the apartment and moving into a house in Winchester. So everything's changing. We're really coming to the close of this show now. And so, yeah, for the finale, Rachel kind of has her leaving party, says her goodbyes. She says her goodbyes to everybody individually, and it's really emotional, especially Monica and Rachel's one. But Ross doesn't get a goodbye, and he's really upset by this. And when he confronts Rachel, she says it just would have been too hard. And they row, and then they end up having sex. Then the next day, he's kind of like, well, should I ask her to stay? Should I not? And he's in this kind of inner turmoil about it. Then Erica goes into labor. So she's about to have her baby. So Monica and Chandler go to the hospital with her. Rachel's like, oh, I want to see the babies and everything, you know, but I have to leave for my flight. Mike's there as well. Like, everyone's all gathered, ready to be like, welcome home, baby. While they're at the hospital, though, Erica has her baby. And they're like, oh my God, you know, it's a little boy or a little girl, I can't remember. Like, this is so cute, you know, how exciting. Then they're like, the other one will be along in a minute. Who's gonna be along and a what now? They are having 2 babies, so it's twins, which is so cute because if you remember, what did I tell you? Just store in your brain, right back from season 1. I don't even have 1, how come they get 2? And now she has 2, which is so sweet. And I also really loved, maybe I'll do more of like, this is just like plot stuff. Maybe I'll do more in depth about like the actual like, but more of a deep dive into certain plot points, because I just really love that we have 3 different types of pregnancy here. We have surrogate with Phoebe, who had the babies for her brother. We have Monica, who ended up adopting. And then we also have Rachel, who ended up, you know, having the more like natural birth, you know, having her own baby and everything. And I just really love that they showcase 3 different, you know, scenarios. And that even though Monica always wanted to be a mom, I think it was so powerful that she ended up being the one to adopt, because it just showed that even if you are adopting a child and they're not biologically yours, that child is still so yours, and you would love them in the exact same way as you would if they were your biological child. And I just thought that was a really lovely way to take their story. So then Erica gives birth to their second baby, and they call them Jack after Monica's dad, and Erica after, obviously, Erica, their birth mom. And they bring them home, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's twins, that's crazy. Rachel then leaves for the airport, and Phoebe's kind of like, are you not going to go after her? And Joey's like, well, maybe this is for the best, he could just get over her. And Ross is like, I don't want to get over her. And he decides to chase her to the airport. So he gets into Phoebe's cab with her. They drive off to the airport to try and stop Rachel before she gets on her flight. Meanwhile, Monica and Chandler are like packing up the house and everything. Joey gives Chandler a baby chicken, a baby duck as like a leaving gift. I just realized I never even mentioned the chicken and the duck. Chandler and Joey have a chicken and duck when they live together, like as pets for like the first 5 seasons or whatever. So then he gives him a little mini chicken and duck as like a kind of, gift. And they also have to break the food table, which I felt like was really like the end of an era. Like there are so many things in this finale that are like really, really closing up the story. So anyway, Ross and Phoebe get to the airport, but they're at the wrong airport. They're at JFK, and Rachel's flight went out of Newark. So Phoebe's like, we could still try and get there. So she's driving Ross to Newark Airport, and she rings Rachel and is like, there's something wrong with the phalange. And basically, because Rachel says this out loud, other passengers over here, and it gets them all evacuated from the plane. Ross gets there in time and is able to speak to Rachel, says that he loves her, to not get on the plane and everything. And she's like, I have to get on the plane, like they're all waiting for me, and she leaves. So Phoebe goes back to everyone and is like, no, she got on the plane, she left. And Ross goes back home and he listens. Oh my God, I could cry again talking about it. He listens to this voicemail from her, and she's like, of course I love you. And then she's like, what am I doing? I love you. I need to get off this plane. And the air hostess is like, no, you can't leave the plane. She's like, please let me get off the plane. And then he's like, did she get off the plane? Did she get off? Oh my God, dude, honestly. And he's like, oh my God, did she get off the plane? And then she's there in the doorway and she's like, I got off the plane. Oh, so good. I adore it. Okay, so good. So good. So they kiss, and Rachel ends up staying in New York to be with Ross. Monica and Chandler have their little twin babies, and they move into their house in Winchester. Phoebe is obviously with Mike, and they decide that they are also going to try and have kids. And Joey, bless his heart, doesn't end up with anybody, which I think I might make a video on how Joey deserved better, because I have so many ways I would have written his ending. But the reason they left it open is because he had a spin-off called Joey, which didn't do very well. But that is it. That is the plot of Friends from memory. I did not look at a single thing. I feel like there's no way I can prove it to you, but I promise you, I have not looked at a single thing. That all just came from too much watching Friends. I think I got some things wrong, or maybe in the wrong order or the wrong seasons. So let me know in the comments. But yeah, what is your favorite season of Friends? What's your favorite episode? Who's your favorite character? Were they on a break? Like, I want to know everything, because I just adore talking about Friends. So that is it for today's video. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because so many of you aren't subscribed and it breaks my little heart. So please subscribe. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.